Call to order. The board president will call the meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Meeting notice statement. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Berkeley Heights Board of Education was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. On January 4th, 2024, notice of the Board of Education meeting schedule was sent to the Star Ledger and the Courier News, and also provided to all schools, PTO presidents, and BHEA president, and posted at the administration building. A copy was also provided to the public library and filed with the municipal clerk. Please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Akiri. Ms. Bradford.
Here.
Dr. Florida. Here. Mr. Hyman. Here. Ms. Jolly.
Here.
Ms. Connor.
Here.
Ms. Penna.
Present.
Ms. Stanley.
Here. Okay, we're going. Mr. Secretary, are you done?
Yes.
Thank you. Adjourn to executive session, whereas the Berkeley Heights Board of Education seeks to adjourn to executive session in full compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act, NJSA 10:4-6. And whereas the Open Public Meetings Act provides that a public body may exclude the public from that portion of the meeting at which it discusses matters related to those identified below. Matters rendered confidential by federal law, state law, or court rule, individual privacy, collective bargaining agreements, purchase or lease of real property if public interest could be adversely affected, investment of public funds if public interest could be adversely affected, tactics or techniques utilized in protecting public safety and property, pending or anticipated litigation, attorney-client privilege, personnel, employment matters affecting specific prospective or current employees. Be it resolved that the Berkeley Heights Board of Education adjourns to executive session to discuss matters related to students, personnel, and legal. And be it further resolved that the minutes of the discussion of any of these items will be disclosed to the public when matters have been determined and confidentiality is no longer applicable. May I have a motion to enter into executive session?
Second.
Seconded. A voice vote, please. Ayes. Aye. Any nays? Abstentions. Okay, the time is 6:33. Okay, we will adjourn to executive session. Our student representatives, Jake and Olivia, thank you.
Hello, everyone. The Highlanders' spring sports season has gotten off to an exciting and entertaining start. Let's recap the latest. The baseball team has swung their way out to an 8-1 start with dominant victories. The baseball athlete of the month is sophomore Zach Gertzma. Coach Roof said Zach has helped lead us to an 8-1 record and a 13th rank in New Jersey. He's currently hitting .567 with 17 hits, 5 home runs, 15 RBIs, and 16 runs scored. Zach has the potential to be a high Division I baseball athlete. The softball team has jumped out to a 6-2 record. The softball athlete of the month is junior captain Chelsea Kieswetter. Coach Lanigan notes she's a huge part of the reason our team is off to such a tremendous start to the season. She has a .433 batting average, leads the team with 13 hits, including 3 doubles, a triple, and 2 home runs. Chelsea is now at 86 hits and is only 14 away from her 100th hit. In addition, the softball team recently participated in a tournament last weekend hosted by Immaculata to raise money for suicide awareness. The team split both of their games, but the girls were able to play for a great cause and help to raise awareness. The boys lacrosse team is currently 2-3 with wins against Morristown Beard and Oratory Prep. The boys lacrosse athlete of the month is senior Brett Peer. Brett leads the team with 14 goals and 19 points. Brett scored his 100th goal this season on April 12th against Hanover Park. The girls lacrosse team is 3-1 with a 2-0 start in their division. The girls lacrosse athlete of the month is senior captain Caitlin Casasito. Coach Wells said, "If I had to summarize Katie in one word, it would be tenacious. She is a key component of our offense and has created many scoring opportunities for our team as a result of her wicked shot and her ability to see the game of lacrosse. Katie has 13 goals, 1 assist, 6 ground balls, and 2 forced turnovers so far this season. The boys and girls track and field teams have been competing in relay and individual meets as they get ready for the Union County Relays on May 2nd and 3rd. The girls track and field athlete of the month is sophomore Natalie Dillon. Natalie had to be at 2 places at once in the discus and 4x200 meters. Head coach Chris Coughlin applauded her for her ability to jump and be willing to take another athlete's place to get the race started. The boys track and field athlete of the month is senior Jack Wargowski, who is a member of the shot and discus, who has been helpful in instructing the younger throwers on improving their craft. Lastly, the golf team has started their season with a 2-3 record. The golf athlete of the month is senior Brady Silverman. Coach Leahy said Brady is one of the team's consistent starters and is improving greatly. Based upon his other athletic accomplishments, some may wonder if he swings like Happy Gilmore, but he's a great golfer with immense potential. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. On April 8th, the 4th marking period officially began at Governor Livingston High School, signifying the beginning of the end of the 2023 through 2024 school year. Throughout the month of April, GL is celebrating Neurodiversity and Autism Acceptance Month with poster making sponsored by the Best Buddies Club, as well as Dress Down for Diversity Week, which began on Monday, April 15th. On April 16th, the GL Music Department held a very successful small ensembles spring concert. On Thursday, April 25th, GL will hold the large ensembles concert, which is the last of this year, so make sure to attend this event. Besides students showing off their musical and performing arts talents, Berkeley Heights teachers also took to the stage on April 9th for a talent show. All proceeds from the show went towards funding senior scholarships, and if you missed the event, a full recording is featured on GLHS TV's YouTube channel. On Friday, May 3rd, the GL Diversity Committee will be holding a spring cultural celebration. This event will take place during the lunch period, and tables from all cultures will be playing traditional games and music. Throughout the month of May, GL students will be taking AP exams. There will be a few exams each day, and the full schedule is posted on College Board's website. Good luck to all who are taking these exams. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you very much for the student reports. Appreciate everything that you do, and you can leave at any time. Okay. Mr. Nixon, Superintendent's Report.
Good evening, everybody. I appreciate that my first superintendent's report gets to start off with something that I'm very comfortable with and enjoy, which is in celebrating the great achievements and accomplishments of a lot of our students at Governor Livingston High School, and in particular tonight, 3 of our winter athletic teams. As we go through this the celebration this evening, we're going to be asking students and coaches to come up. When the coaches come up, they'll join me and Ms. Clifton over here. We will ask the athletes to come over here to this side. So with that in mind, if any of the Board of Education members, business administrator, or student representatives, we have reserved seats for you over there if you would like to take those seats. And I'm going to be asking members of the athletic committee one at a time to come help support me with each team. So Mr. Hyman, before you get too comfortable, if you want to just stay up here with me, we're going to ask you to join me and help me out by celebrating our ice hockey team this evening. Before I dive into our teams, I just want to make sure that I recognize Ms. Clifton for the amazing job that she does with our athletic department year in and year out. Our teams, no matter what the season, are incredibly successful, and we're proud of the way they conduct their business on and off the field, court, pool, however it is, ice, however it is you may want to participate in your activity. Our students and our coaches conduct themselves with class, and I think that's a direct reflection of the hard work and expectations that Ms. Clifton puts forward. So I would just like everybody to recognize Ms. Clifton for the amazing job she does. Thank you. So the way we're going to do this, I'm going to introduce the coaches for the teams. I'm going to ask that the coaches come forward to the podium and introduce the athletes from their team and say a few words about the season. And then after that, I will share and award the proclamation to each team. So first, like I mentioned before, is our ice hockey team, and I would like to welcome head coach Greg Jensen, assistant coaches Matt Altamare, Travis DeLillo, and volunteer coach Carson Wallers.
All right, so we've got a very special group of hockey players here. Over like the last 2 to 3 seasons, they have accomplished more than anything the hockey team has ever accomplished in the history of this school. Even though we fell short of the ultimate goal this season, we still had a ton to be proud of. We got the most wins we've ever had in a season, and we also got the first ever South sectional co-op championships. That was huge as well. So here we got all right. So whereas the varsity ice hockey team of Governor Livingston High School and New Providence High School, located in Berkeley Heights and New Providence, New Jersey, consists of players Jordan Baum, Teddy Baum, Jackson Benward, Scott Kappen, Owen Cook, Daltrey Ferrigno, Kyle Foster, Anthony Labisi, Sam Newman, Alec Novotny, Michael Sharavarov, Jeremy Sixnius, Ryan Sixnius, Brady Silverman, Ryan Skatarzak, Griffin Ulrich, Jake Vick, Carter Wallers, Charlie Zarinko, Jacob Wattel, and managers Ryan Tomic and Meredith O'Rourke.
Okay, I will complete the remainder of the proclamation. Whereas the varsity ice hockey team of Governor Livingston High School and New Providence High School earned the title of South State Sectional Group C co-op champions by defeating Manasquan Point Pleasant Beach by the score of 2-1 on February 29th, 2024 at Richard Cody Arena. And whereas the Highlanders completed the season with a record of 21 wins, 5 losses, and 1 tie, and a statewide ranking of 21st. And whereas the team saw each of its members contribute individually to the team during its championship run. And whereas the Berkeley Heights, Mountainside, and New Providence communities are very proud of the accomplishments of this team and its coaches. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Berkeley Heights Board of Education members applaud the 2023-2024 ice hockey team and congratulate the student athletes and coaching staff on their outstanding championship season. And be it resolved that a signed and sealed copy of this resolution be framed and kept on display at Governor Livingston High School, signed and sealed this 18th day of April of the year 2024. Congratulations. That was good practice. Great. I always look great as a teacher. That was natural. I'd now like to ask Mrs. Penna to please join me. Okay, next we will be recognizing the varsity fencing boys foil team of Governor Livingston High School. I'd like to invite the coaches, head coach Michael Wang, assistant coach Kevin Zhao, and assistant coach Alton Grossman.
Thank you. So first and foremost, I am extremely proud of everything that this squad has accomplished, not only this year, but over my entire time coaching them. The dedication that all of these fencers show, both on and off the strip, to the sport of fencing has blown me away. It has been 10 years since the boys foil team has won a championship of any kind and beating all 9 schools on their way to winning the toughest division in the state of boys foil was really a way to do it in style. All 3 of our starters on this team are upperclassmen and have started for multiple years. However, their records and accomplishments have improved year over year. And while this championship will say 2024 on it, it really is the culmination of years and years of hard work that all of these boys have put in and the dedication they have shown to this sport. So without further ado, I would like to invite up your 2024 Boys District 5 Foil Champions. Whereas the varsity boys fencing team of Governor Livingston, located in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey, consists of players Nicholas Angelos, Cameron Bach, Joe Leposki, Jaden Mann, Ronak Sinha Chaudhuri, and Stephen Yu.
Okay, I'll now read the remainder of the proclamation. Whereas the varsity fencing boys foil team of Governor Livingston High School earned the title of District 5 Boys Foil Champion by defeating all 9 other schools in the district, including Ridge and state champions Bernards High School by the score of 22 wins out of a total 27 bouts on February 11th, 2024 at Montgomery High School. And whereas the team successfully beat all 9 schools head-to-head to win the District 5 Foil Championship title. And whereas the Highlander Boys Foil Squad completed the season with a record of 97 wins, 36 losses, and a statewide ranking of top 8. And whereas the team saw each of its members contribute individually to the team during its championship run. And whereas the Berkeley Heights and Mountainside communities are very proud of the accomplishments of this team and its coaches. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Berkeley Heights Board of Education members applaud the 2023-2024 Boys Fencing Foil Squad and congratulate the student athletes and coaching staff on their outstanding championship season. And be it resolved that a signed and sealed copy of this resolution be framed and kept on display at Governor Livingston High School, signed and sealed this 18th day of April of the year 2024. Congratulations. Okay, Mrs. Jolly, would you join me, please? Next team we'll be recognizing this evening is our girls swimming team, our varsity girls swimming team. I'd like to welcome up head coach David Kloss and assistant coach Grace Patingolo.
Well, thank you all for inviting us here. It's always a pleasure to come and we're really proud, Grace and I, of the girls swim team. We have really a heck of a streak going. The girls who are seniors have never not been to the sectional finals. I have, as give you one example, Ariana, who's one of our captains, her sister was a captain for me 4 years ago. And between her and her sister, they've never not been to sectional finals. So we've been to sectional finals 8 straight years. So I'm really proud of these girls, and they are graduating. The senior girls this year, they're graduating as back-to-back sectional champions. So I'm really just pleased as Pete, pleased as I don't know, whatever, but I'm pleased as Peach. I'm really pleased. So without further ado, let's announce some of the girls who are here. All right. So the varsity girls swimming team of Governor Livingston High School, located in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey, consists of swimmers Maddie Kinney, captain. Ariana Mowry, captain. Sophie Taskilla, captain. Lillian Arts. Hannah Beffler. Caitlin Casacedo. Layla D'Amato. Anna Froloff. Nina Froloff. Sarah Gleason. Caitlin Hughes. Jasleen Jen. Nia Joseph. Lila Kapusinski. Rachel Newth. Zoe Menino. Jade McCarthy. Michaela Pires. Pippa Reimacher. Catherine Roisman. Karis Lewinsky. Julietta Stravoyu, Anna Strid, and managers Lindsay Kim and Mariah Robinson. Your 2024 Highlander girls swim team.
Whereas the girls varsity swimming team of Governor Livingston High School earned the title of NJSIAA Central C Sectional Champions by defeating Shore Regional High School by the score of 103-67 on February 15th, 2024 at the College of New Jersey. And whereas the Highlanders completed the season with a record of 9 wins, 4 losses, and the program has competed in the NJSIA State Sectional Championship meet for the 8th consecutive year. Whereas each of its members contributed individually to the team during its championship run, and whereas the Berkeley Heights and Mountainside communities are very proud of the accomplishments of this team and its coaches. Now therefore be it resolved that the Berkeley Heights Board of Education members applaud the 2023-2024 girls swim team and congratulate the student athletes and coaching staff on their outstanding championship season. And be it resolved that the signed and sealed copy of this resolution be framed and kept on display at Governor Livingston High School. Signed and sealed this 18th day of April of the year 2024. Congratulations.
Get a good team picture.
Sure,
I called your agent. It was said.
Did they ask?
Go squeeze in everybody.
To our swimming team, our fencing team, and our ice hockey team, thank you so much for all your wonderful accomplishments and hard work. And thank you to the parents who also provided the transportation and the funding for all this. To our athletic committee, thank you. And Mr. Nixon, thank you. Continue with the report.
Yes, thank you. So just 3 more items of the superintendent's report. First, I wanted to share that the GLHS Daffodil Project, which you may recall from last school year, recently appeared in Art Beat magazine. This project was a collaboration in correspondence with Holocaust Remembrance Day. This was a collaboration between the Art Honor Society and our Jewish Students Action Team, and they titled it the Daffodil Project. The daffodil symbolizes rebirth and new beginnings. And what's really interesting, if you look closely at the picture, including in the daffodils, are names of family members and friends that were impacted by the Holocaust, and they were submitted by students, staff, and community members from throughout our school community. I wanted to give an update to the Board of Education on questions that were asked at our last board meeting, in particular in regard to the attorney RFP process. Within that board meeting, a concern was raised that proper process was not followed, as the board did not vote on a resolution to approve the previous RFP process. And specifically 18A 4.3, 18A 4.5, Part E were cited in support of that concern. I reached out to an attorney for clarification and clarified that those statutes do not apply to this process because this was not for competitive contracting. The exception to those statutes is for professional services, which is what this process falls under. So as a result, there was no requirement for the Board of Ed to go out to bid at all. However, the board may choose to if it wishes, but it's not required. The Board of Ed can also vote to allow late submissions should they choose to in regard to this process as well. So all said, there's no issue with the process that was previously followed, and the board could take additional action if it chose. And then finally, the last portion of my report is in regard to an update regarding policy 8600. Since our last board meeting where policy 8600 was brought up, there was a meeting where we had an opportunity to bring the consultants that did the traffic study and reported back on hazardous routes. We were able to meet with them, ask them questions specifically about their rubric, study their rubric, ask them questions about the rubric, and it was really insightful, really informative. For me, it was something that helped catch me up to speed on the work that we've been doing with this policy. It was also very beneficial. 3 members of the Berkeley Heights Police Department joined us at that meeting, so they were able to listen in and give some thoughts and feedback as well. One of the really interesting practices was one of the consultants utilized Google Earth to kind of walk us through some of the routes and explain specifically what are some of the aspects that they look at. Everywhere from road markings, crosswalks, lack of sidewalks, obstructions in the roadway, inclines, declines, is there a curb? A lot of those different aspects that they look at when they go through it, which gave me insight as to how I might be able to take a look at that rubric and make sense of the recommendation that was made. Then I had the opportunity over spring break to go out with Lieutenant May from the Berkeley Heights Police Department. That was on Thursday, April 4th. Together, we drove all of the routes that were determined to be hazardous routes and took a look at those routes along with a blank rubric. Along with that, Lieutenant May was great in sharing a lot of different aspects of those roads that people might want to consider, as well as things that were pointed out by the consultants. Specifically, I'll give a few examples. For example, on Diamond Hill Road, it has a direct one-way highway exit. There's no crosswalks except for at the light of the intersection with Valley and a house from Berkeley Heights, for example, that is right on that intersection right there. There is no crosswalk from that house, and the 2 crosswalks that are on that intersection lead to nowhere. The crosswalk line that is in existence on one side of that road, to use the word of the consultant, is obliterated, which means like it's not clearly apparent to drivers, which is part of what they look at as well. There's also rock walls and other obstructions that prevent a safe walking path in some sections of that road. Along with that, he pointed out McMain Ave. When you're driving on Route 78 West and you use exit 43, for an example, there is no way to make a left turn and head down towards the Scotch Plains area. So McMain Ave ends up being a cut-through U-turn type of street. There are several U-turn signs on that street, which, obviously if police are in the area, those can be followed, but they may not necessarily be by drivers. There is no sidewalk. There's no curb there either. So for somebody who might be making a U-turn on that street without any curb could present a dangerous situations for students to walk. That also happened to be the day after it rained significantly, and one side of the road was not walkable because of the amount of water that was flowing down that side of the road into a drainage area. We looked at Emerson Lane, particularly the stretch of houses on Emerson Lane that were identified as part of this study. And one of the interesting pieces was a housing complex that's being built in just as you get out of Berkeley Heights into Warren, which will inevitably cause a little bit of additional traffic onto that road once it's completed. I believe the direct exit from that complex will not be directly onto Emerson, but to access certain areas, people might be cutting through Emerson right there. In addition to that, rock walls, leaves, trees, other obstructions line that road where there are no clear crosswalks or sidewalks for students. And then finally, taking a look at, Horseshoe Road as an example, all the way from Plainfield Ave to house number 136. There are no crosswalks. As you know, there's fields on the other side right there. And then there's even additional homes as you get past 136 and you go up past the rehabilitation center there. I believe it is some other houses that are there also. Altogether, I believe the experience of being able to ride along with Lieutenant May and to learn a little bit more from the consultants that we met with lead me to believe that I think this is an important policy and a policy that supports student safety. And it would be my recommendation that we consider this policy in order to provide not only safety for our students as they travel to school, but also for the community in general in terms of the amount of traffic that could potentially be created at drop off and pick up at certain schools as a result. And that is the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. The board president's report, update on board goals. The Board of Education will improve planning and the committee structure, our first goal. The board is refining and standardizing our committee minutes. The Board of Education will work to improve communication both internally and externally. The board is discussing the option of hybrid meetings, including a timeline for trials with IT and discussions on updating policies related to remote meetings. I have reached out to neighboring districts and I've spoken with the Ridgewood School Board of Education President, Ms. Sheila Brogan. The Board of Education, number 3, will evaluate the CSA in a timely manner. The board will begin the evaluation of Dr. Melissa Varley. We are in contact with our NJSBA field representatives about this process. The deadline is July 1st. The Board of Education will promote all district goals. The Board of Education has been involved in the budget process at this time. And our last goal, keeping up with board training. Board members have had the opportunity for frequent ongoing training in person and online, and it is tracked within the NJSBA. In terms of liaison reports, the Berkeley Heights Education Foundation met on Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. We would like to thank the BHEF for purchasing 2,000 pairs of Eclipse paper glasses for K-8 students to use on Monday, April 8th. During the solar eclipse, there were some great lessons going on. Mrs. Stanley is the BOE representative, and she attended and answered questions, and she may have more to add in a minute. Looking at our next one is the newly formed committee in Berkeley Heights. It is the Veterans Affairs Committee Liaison. The second meeting was held on Wednesday, April 17th at Town Hall. On Thursday, May 23rd, the committee is having a red, white, and blue day in the Heights to begin the town's Memorial Day celebration and invites our school staff and students to participate by wearing red, white, and blue. The town hall staff are volunteering and using this as a fundraiser for our VFW and our veterans. The Veterans Affairs Committee also invites all students to participate by marching in the Berkeley Heights Memorial Day Parade on Monday, May 27th. Dennis Ryan is the parade coordinator, and students are encouraged to march with their school banner wearing patriotic colors and/or sports shirts. A special invitation is extended to our GL student athletes to march and receive recognition from the community for their accomplishments. The town liaison, the Berkeley Heights Town Council, met on Tuesday, April 16th. May is Mental Health Month in Berkeley Heights, and the Rotary Club and the Mayor's Wellness Committee, with the purpose of promoting mental health and wellness in our community, is putting green ribbon clings throughout the local businesses and town hall. The PTO curriculum shared and discussed the curriculum agenda with the PTO liaisons from each of the schools. I have no other updates, but there are updates from other committees and liaisons. Would you like to start, Mr. Hyman, athletics?
Yep, I can do athletics and technology. So I've got buckle up. These could be long ones. I don't know. We don't meet that often. Okay, athletics committee, we met April 9th. And thanks to Ann on a number of updates. Just going chronologically through what we covered. We talked about Lower Columbia Field and the proposal from the Berkeley Heights Recreation Department. This has been discussed before, the loss of Snyder Ave Field Complex and what's going on with Union County Parks. And the proposal from the town to lease the field that's in review phase with our board attorney. Just noting that some board members obviously have some ongoing concerns about that agreement, so it's still in review. And talked about just the process of how she's been able to request access to still conduct games at Snyder Ave, and it is a bit lengthy. So certainly this is a concern that she raised from a field use perspective. We talked about lights at GL. I wish Jake was still here. Probably should have tipped him off that this is coming up, but tireless work from Jake has gotten us this far, which is that we did discuss it. This will come up again because Rob and Ann have shared a prioritized list of other needs. But just noting that one, the town council did change an ordinance about lighting on the fields, so the pathway is open. The installation of lights on the turf stadium here is a viable option. We talked about different options from a fundraising perspective, potentially partnering with BHPAL, Highlander Booster Club, and other orgs if we needed to raise funds for installation of lights. TBD on the actual costs. Don't ask me any questions about that at this point because we did not get specific on that. But Ann did talk about types of lights we might consider, non-spillage lights, in consideration of community neighbors. There also costs would be affected by whether we'd use 4 stanchions or 6 in terms of those lights. We talked about a timeline of trying to get quotes ended by or in September in order to make sure we had a plan for where the funds would come from and how much we would need. We talked about the press box, which has also come up before. This is the press box at the turf field. The structure leaks and has other issues, and talked about the need for the architect to come out in the fall, most likely, to review the area and present different options. We also talked about different options for using what a new press box would be, i.e. academic classes, and other electives that could take place there. Again, pricing TBD. The discussion also covered whether installation of that press box could potentially be part of capital improvements at some point, which again will come up again in a moment. We talked about other needs, other athletic needs, other facilities that are in need of repair and updates. And in a moment, I'll go down the list that Rob and Ann kindly provided. We also talked about just other budget concerns, questions that have come up about uniform replacements, coaching positions, any teams that we can't field. There were some questions which will also come up on this list about equity from a girls' locker room perspective. And Rob, Mr. Nixon kindly shared some feedback there. The notion there is that there are a lot of options that have been looked at. I think the board members who took the tour probably saw some of this last. I wasn't on the tour. It was fall. Was November. Okay. Yep. So the building structure options in that instance could include things like containers. And for a girls' locker room, the notion is that this is and what we talked about is this is not a quick fix. It's something we'd want to get done right and do it properly for a number of reasons. We did talk about retention of coaching positions versus cuts. I hit on that a little bit. And did explain how some programs like girls lacrosse did not have the numbers to sponsor a freshman team for 2024, and how she has been able to be creative with moving that stipend to other positions, for example, like a varsity assistant coach for ice hockey. Let's see. And then she just updated us on participation numbers. I'll just tick them off quickly. Total students participating for fall sports, 23-24, 292, winter, 314, and spring, 299. Those numbers are down a little bit, although it's somewhat reflective to overall school population being down a little bit. So we covered that. And then obviously we talked a little bit about the recognition that we did tonight and just some other ideas for ways to, move it a bit closer to the ends of season, which is sometimes not possible. Spring, i.e. goes right to the end of the school year. And also just ways to maybe get board members, athletics committee members involved, perhaps if we were to do it at, for example, a senior awards night or an athletic awards night. So more to come there. It won't, any changes won't happen most likely until probably fall, but just noting that we did look at that. And then I did want to go down the list because I think it's important. It's important from a a financial perspective, obviously, from the R word referendum perspective, and also just I think from an equity and even a safety perspective, to be honest. A lot of these are not new items, but I think it's important to hear just in order. This is a priority list of athletic facility needs. I would have shared it sooner. We got it today, and I'm happy to share it with the full board. And obviously, we should be thinking about these things. Number one, dedicated locker room space for various female teams. Facility could be in addition to the complex with a standalone structure with locker space for at least 2 to 3 teams per season, team meeting area, bathrooms, and other amenities. This will need to be part of a larger facility upgrade project, and we could look to partner with the Highlander Booster Club. Number two, installation of a structurally safe and fully enclosed press box for the turf facility. I hinted at this, but the current facility box is old, it leaks, and the flooring has been patched several times. It's also infested with bees and other insects. I can attest to that, having sat up there for some games. A new facility is needed to house in-game personnel, football coaches during games, and location to support huddle, game, practice filming. This also will need to be part of a larger facility upgrade project. BHPS could look to partner with local companies. So naming rights, these are things we've talked about a little bit. Sorry, it's long, but I think it's important. 3, dedicated adjunct coaches locker room space. So this would allow for GLHS, HP male staff to have a private office and our outside district coaches a space to conduct team meetings. Also likely to need to be part of a larger facility project. 4, red gym floor refinished with new graphics and similar branding graphics as the blue gym floor in 2023. Not sure if this project is part of summer plans by the Building and Grounds Department, but that's a question. 5, both blue and red gym walls repainted, consolidating the championship banner recognition and identifying origin of the rust on the beams in the blue gym, seal and repaint. This should be part of a maintenance plan every 5 years to appropriately protect the school district's property, but this needs to be completed as soon as possible. 6, install volleyball stanchion sleeves. We've talked about this at past meetings and reports, and paint volleyball lines in the blue gym. We obviously have had and celebrated our girls volleyball team, which has been hugely successful in recent years. This would allow us to host state tournament games with larger crowds. We've sold out the red gym in 2022 and 23 during state sectional championships. This also would allow for the possibility in the future of a boys volleyball team, which is something else that we've received feedback from the public on and have talked about. And this project could be supported by partnering with VHPAL and outside organizations. 2 more new logo / branded wall pads for the red gym. These are out for quote and could be possibly completed within the 23-24 school year. To fully upgrade both gyms, blue gym should have new padding too with geo logos. This will fully upgrade both gyms. And then now that we talked about the lights at the field and the different solutions there, we also just noting from a wish list perspective, less of a priority need, would be a larger weight room to support the growing needs for student athletes in terms of speed, strength, and power, and then a dedicated space for visiting teams to use when they play games here. So that concludes my athletics report. I don't know if you want me to take any questions, and I can go right to technology otherwise. I know it's a mouthful or like
Okay.
a lot of mouthfuls.
All right, let's go to technology.
Technology next. Okay, good.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So
Questions or comments? Yeah.
one point on
please.
that, and I think that was a great update, like
Sure,
a lot
yeah,
of detail.
yeah.
Just selfishly thinking a little bit about the finance and the impact, right,
Yeah.
on things like the budget.
Yep.
So a little bit of preview, we have a finance meeting happening tomorrow, so I don't know if some of that is already in our list. Maybe this is more of an AJ question. But at some point, we need to understand the conversations or the requirements that are coming out of the athletics committee and how that matters to the budget. So just putting it out there.
And again, I don't have specific costs. We don't have specific costs, obviously, on all of the items mentioned, but obviously some of them, you heard that priority order, which I can share with the full board later tonight, so that we've got that for the meeting tomorrow. And again, there's some of these items maybe could be addressed sooner. Some of them need to be addressed sooner, and some of them might require the R word. Yeah.
Jordan,
Yeah.
quickly, at least 4 of the items that you mentioned, if you can share it like via email, won't they be part of we have capital reserves and maintenance reserves. And I think last year, Julie did withdraw from the capital reserve. It's still in play. So most of these, I think at least 4 or 5 that I heard I can, if you email me, I can
Yeah.
identify. I think if they're going to be for longer than 5 years, we can definitely include them as capital improvements or maintenance. I think some of them I heard as maintenance, so
Yes.
that would be great.
Yeah. I'll send them. Go ahead, Angela. I'll send them tonight, either from here or, yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify also that some of that could be, we discussed in the committee meeting, that some of those could be determined as capital projects, because some of them, like the press box, were of a concern with safety. So
Yeah.
not necessarily be put in the finance budget, but maybe could be put aside for capital reserves. I think those were things we discussed as well.
Thanks. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I'll go to the next big one.
So most of the items that you listed, we are trying to target for next school year, or do we want to start on them immediately? What's like the target date that?
Yeah, you want this one, Rob, or do you want me to? It's an assorted mix in terms of timing. Obviously, a couple of them are current school year,
Right.
but
Yeah, I mean, I would say as funds are identified and as we can do things, some things are things that would be part of larger projects. Other things are items that we'd be looking to partner with community groups to help try and support some of those things. So for some of them, the timeline is more reflective of when we can wrap enough people around the cause and move forward with it.
yeah, it is interesting. This is now I'll just add opinion to it, but it's just that we've talked about, I feel like a bit of a broken record because having been on athletics committee for a couple of years, so these are not new topics, many of them. Girls locker room conversation, I feel like Rob brought it up a couple of years ago. The lights, I mean, Jake, credit to Jake, actually has actually went door to door a couple of years ago to basically say, hey, if we wanted to, could we, what's your take? Would you be amenable to that sort of thing? So, and yeah, things like the press box, if you've been to a football game or soccer game and you get close to it, I wouldn't get too close to it if the wind's blowing. Yeah. So it's, yeah, not a joking matter. And these are things that we should think seriously about and try to move quickly on. All right, I'll pivot to technology and keep us moving. Technology committee, we met just on the 16th, Tuesday of this week. I had, as technology chair, I had invited 2 additional board members because not all of us could attend. So we had Gail and Natasha both were able to join as well, and I was on this meeting as well. And thanks to Jeremy and Rob for joining and for patience and questions on this one. So we covered a lot of ground. The bulk of the conversation was a continuation from our last full board meeting, and talking about remote participation at board meetings. I won't go blow for blow, but I think it's just important to note that a lot of due diligence was put into this conversation. We covered what are other school districts doing. You heard Gail mention that she's spoken to Ridgewood. We talked about Cy had raised Madison and Ridgewood, among others, who other districts that have had hybrid meetings, and how are they doing it. So we talked through a lot of the sort of the requirements, email entry, that sort of a thing. Jeremy gave us some perspective in terms of potential moderator needs and who that person could be. And again, whether it could be him, probably not, and the need potentially for a technician, that sort of a thing. We talked about the platforms themselves. There are a lot out there these days. So people say Zoom the way that we say Kleenex. It's not, there are a lot of options. So we did talk through Google Meets, for example. We talked about WebEx, and Jeremy gave us some perspective there. And we started to move toward what would it take to get toward a proof of concept, essentially. Just so the public knows, right now we record in Zoom. Keep me honest here, by the way, Jeremy. You can jump out of there if I mess this up. And then we convert to YouTube. So the status quo would be no cost YouTube as a live stream. We did talk a bit about too the fact that since moving here and part of moving from meetings from CMS to GL, there was a cost. The number from Jeremy in terms of previous tech purchases was $8,500. And then moving toward where we're getting action wise. So Jeremy did share a nice schematics of what this space would look like from a Zoom room perspective, and how it could work. And there basically are 3 options that he walked the committee through. A would be a TV for Zoom, essentially, where we'd be watching on a TV. We technically did this for a prior meeting. It was a borrowed TV from CMS. I don't know where that TV is right now, but it's a TV that ultimately would need to go back or be solved for in option A. And there'd be the question of, would the public be able to see from behind the TV, et cetera, et cetera. But that's an option. There's an option where we could mount a TV on the wall near the cafeteria banners. And that would allow for a little easier setup, less dependence on technicians. The custodial staff would set up that table, and onward we would go. And then there's a third option by which the projector screen here, which we all love near and dear, would be used for Zoom. Note on the projector that Jeremy shared, it's 15 years old. And there is money budgeted at some point to replace that projector and another projector in this room with 85-inch TVs. But there's obviously that's not this school year, as I understand it. And so that would take a little time to install. So net, the takeaway on this, there is no additional cost for a pilot, which is important to note. There's a little bit of work that needs to happen here in terms of figuring out the kind of run of show, who would promote speakers, who's going to be the moderator. Is it the board president? Is it a superintendent? Is it someone else, et cetera? So we talked about who that can be. And again, the way that other districts have run it. One important note, I think, that Mr. Giordano mentioned is that we do have NJSLA testing coming up in May, second or third week of May. So we want to just be mindful of everyone's time in terms of that, and ideally try to roll this out post that testing. But we did talk about trying to the takeaway from Jeremy is that he and the tech team are going to work on a demo of what that remote participation will look like in a Zoom webinar. We'll call it a Zoom webinar for now. He's going to record it and then be able to share it with us as a board. Probably ahead, or at least initially as a committee and then as a board. We're gonna endeavor to do another meeting in May, date TBD for now. Come back to you, Jeremy, to try to iron that out, and then try to roll this out for a board test meeting. I'm gonna say June or July. If anyone cringes on that, let me know. But that is the endeavor, and it seems realistic. Anyone else can chime in on that. So net, we're in a good place, and a lot of members of the public have reached out about this. Sounds like we'll be in business, at least from a test and a demo perspective, within the next 2 months. Just quickly, other agenda items we hit on. We talked about classroom technology, just overview and strategy. Thanks, Jeremy, and with a goal of trying to simplify things for teachers. We talked about the phone system. 3 systems need updating. Our current system is called on-prem. We need to replace it by 2029. There's no option but to replace it. That must be nice from a tech perspective. Phones can't be transferred to another system, and they're not cheap. If we were to replace all phones, we're talking about classroom phones and office phones. We have 144 office phones, 252 classroom phones. Be $130,000 to replace all that. Jeremy's also investigating cloud phone systems. Talked about PA systems and the need to replace some of those. He showed us Mountain Park, which looked like it was past its time. It was from 1993, and I don't think it's with us anymore. Talked about security and cameras and what just the update from connections that get lost or need replacing. And the service itself is expensive. He did share a cost on Meraki. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Cameras. If we were to do everything, all cameras, that's install, new equipment, the licensing, which is expensive and requires renewal every 5 years. We're talking about $664,000 from a camera's perspective. So big numbers there. And Sai did ask for some details just in terms of what's not working, how many, the history on this, who installed, for example, and could wired phones be used or paid for by capital reserve. So covered a lot of ground. We are going to likely have another technology committee meeting in May, but I'll come back on dates. I miss anything? Anything else you guys want to add? Or Jeremy? All right. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm going home. Thanks, guys.
Any questions?
Yeah,
So the
question.
technology committee is saying that we're going to move forward with a pilot to do some sort of participation online.
Yes, the specifics, i.e. cameras on, cameras off, how we'll promote to ask a question, et cetera. We talked all those scenarios, but that will pin down as part of the demo and
If we have cameras off, do we need to worry about these TVs, projectors necessarily?
fair question. I mean, I think
Okay.
the assumption is that some cameras would be on or want to be on in terms of public participation. So probably yes. I mean, we want to see either way, even if the camera's off, you'd want to see the square of the person who wants to ask a
name.
question. Yes.
Okay.
Like that, like daddy's iPhone, that kind of thing. Just kidding.
But like, I mean, from here, right, like daddy's iPhone could be read.
Sure, sure. Yes.
Much easier than maybe the projector issues that we'll have.
Yeah. I
If
mean,
we're
it
doing
it sounds
video.
like options A and B are the most viable short term. Obviously, if and when we get a beautiful 85-inch screen right there, we're in business, but
So I'm just gonna bring up, I did look at Madison and Ridgewood, and both of them have policy 167, I think it is, that talks about what the actual public participation is, and both of them had policies that stated kind of rules a little bit, not much, just a little bit to make sure that we are on the same page. So I am gonna try to move that with the policy committee and decide what we want to look at, just so we protect ourselves from anything.
it's a good thought.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. Mrs. Jolly, do you have any on the Educator of the Year updates?
Nothing at this point, other than we did confirm the date. I was worried that we didn't, but our business office was forward looking and they locked in the date right now for June 10th. And we obviously would like to do it in the auditorium and make it extra special.
Thank you. Any other updates?
I
Mrs.
definitely have
Stanley?
some, sorry.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Mrs. Khanna?
Finance Committee, Finance Committee met right before spring break. And again, it was to focus on the budget. I'll just kind of go quickly, just in the interest of time. And these minutes will be circulated along with, all the other materials. Still working through understanding the components of the budget, what drives the biggest part of the budget, along with our business office. One thing that was discussed was how do we increase the public engagement throughout the budget process? As a part of that, there was a survey that was sent out by the district team to get inputs from community members on the budget priorities. So I believe the survey is closed now as of yesterday or day before, one of those days. Yes. There was a detailed conversation on the transportation expenses that are in the budget right now and understanding what's driving that. Some of the conversation that we are going to have today as a part of the agenda is going to impact the path forward in terms of how that piece of the budget might or might not change. We talked briefly about tiered busing options and is it viable at this point to explore that? At this point, it appears that our dismissal times are not really helping us get to a point where we can truly get a tiered system for busing that will work for us, that will involve redesign of the bus routes, as well as then getting pricing that would be appropriate. There was a transportation meeting on the 28th, and we'll hear more about that, I believe, from Pamela. Depending on what happens today with the policy 8600, the transportation team will decide if they need to go and rebid the routes or not. A few questions that were asked as a part of the process was, how does the budget support our district goals, student achievement, the DEI initiatives that are part of our board goals, as well as district goals? What is the recommended surplus for a district the size of Berkeley Heights? Trying to align the enrollment numbers with the salaries in the budget. How do we think about the increased revenue due to higher interest rates? We do have a follow-up scheduled for tomorrow to dive deeper into this, so more to come. What are you, Pamela?
Okay, so I'm going to start with policy. We had a policy meeting on 4/11 at 12:30. I'm just going to start with policy 8600. This is on student transportation. So this policy supports student safety. This policy promotes traffic safety. This policy is the desire of the transportation department and the district, who drove with the Berkeley Heights Police Department to look at the recommended hazardous roads. This policy is the financially smart use of our transportation budget while giving us the most seats available for subscription busing, which brings revenue to the district. And this policy addresses the inequitable courtesy busing we currently have by removing homes that have safe student routes to school and documents everyone who would get busing so it is clear who and why. Then we have Regulation 8600. Again, student transportation. This is the regulation. This policy is not connected to the revisions to policy 8600. This is a regulation. We already have a policy 8600. So even if tonight's revisions don't pass, we still need the regulation to guide the policy we currently have. Then we have policy 6421. We have purchases budgeted. The committee had a good discussion on this policy. The committee decided to keep 15% of the bid threshold in order to give staff the ability to make purchases in a timely manner. And then we have the policy and the regulation 5116, education of homeless youths. This is one is a revision and one is new. The regulation is new. Again, it was minor changes and mostly just to update who the designee is for the public. And then we have abolish policy 5460.02. That's for bridge year. As the program is no longer exists for our students, we're going to abolish it. Then we had the personnel committee on 3/25 at 4 o'clock. We had a tenure review. There are 10 staff members who were presented for tenure by the district administrators to the personnel committee. Then we also had a contract review for a member of the district office, and we are going to continue to work to improve uniformity in contracts. Then I had an HIB ABS meeting on April 20th at 9:30. William Wildriff had their kindness challenge. They also participated in coins for kids in Kenya. The kindergartners separated the coins, the first graders counted the coins, and the second grade bagged them. Kids read at home for coins, right? So they read a book and then they could put a coin in the box. They did this for 3 weeks and raised $78, which supports 49 students in Kenya, their education. They're also learning about conflict resolution in their win periods. That is what I need periods. Then we have Mountain Park and Hughes. They are learning the power of resilience, that you can bounce back or go splat. They are finding ways to grow from mistakes. Mountain Park recently brought the Eagle tickets to their building, just like Huey does, for Huey tickets. CMS did random acts of kindness, and they also worked on neurodiversity. The Berkeley Heights Ed Foundation sponsored their Lunch and Learn for the book Rules, which is about a girl with an autistic sibling, for their Lunch and Learn. At GL, they did something called Trend. It was about prevention. It was about school stress, managing commitments, and what does a leader look like. They also held a veterans food drive, and they had a homework-free weekend the week of 3/15. They spoke about HIB investigations, how they work. They went over filing with consistency to make sure that all the different counselors are filing in the same way so they look uniform. The process, just for parents to know, parents will get a phone call and then you will receive a letter home in the mail. After the superintendent views the report, an email is sent out with the status. After the BOE receives and votes, another final letter is sent. This is what they wanted to make important, that the final letter, sometimes it comes very late, right? The HIB had been months ago, but you do need to receive that final letter. So don't get upset when you do. They also asked if the Berkeley Heights Board of Ed has HIB training. So we talked about some of the basic training that we get through NJSBA, and they asked if maybe the board could consider doing more training together on HIB. And then the last one is the Berkeley Heights Education Foundation. I was with them last night. They talked about their lunches, which again was rules. They talked about the students at CMS self-advocating for a novel. They're going to do the graphic novel The Day the Towers Fell. So they are working on scheduling that for the end of the year. They donated a scale to the nurse. They had magazine holders for French, and they bought magnetic whiteboards at Mountain Park. And they're also piloting stretch bands for sensory for children across the chairs. And I thank them for all that they do, because we know as we try to get the budget that some of these smaller things are just not accomplished in our budget. And we really thank them for all that they do. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any other reports, liaison or committees? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on now to board communications and report of the business administrator.
There are four communications that I had received, and the four topics that I have. First one was mice infestation. Second was the superintendent search firms. Third was appointment of business administrator. And last was appointment of Rob Nixon as superintendent of schools. Those were the four that I received.
Thank you.
Next is the report of the business administrator. At Governor Livingston, there were cafeteria TVs that were installed. Those are going to be used for monitor menus for the cafeteria. In room 13, a projector was installed. Library water pipe had to be pro-pressed again for a problem that was going on. And a varsity field scoreboard was repaired. At Mary Kay, new thermostats were installed in 3 classrooms. Fence installation was completed in the lower playground and parking lot. At Mountain Park, main entrance ramp was repaired and potholes were filled. At Hughes, pricing was obtained for a ramp repair. At William Woodrow, there were new thermostats were installed. Repair of the cafeteria fan. Install of a new water heater and expansion tank. Installed new timers for security lights and potholes were filled. At CMS, both gym floors were scrubbed and recoated with a finish. PA system was repaired in the B wing and all speakers are working and the volume is working. District-wide, we had started painting in the administration building. District custodian transfers were completed. Pothole project is still ongoing. Custodian transfers needed their swipe cards updated for new buildings, and triple tap features updated with emails were done. And the B&G director updated his IPM license for the district on April 5th. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Comments from the public on agenda items. During this portion of the meeting, districts, residents and staff are invited to address the Board of Education on agenda items only. The board requests that individuals state their name, address, town of residence, or school of attendance for the record. All comments should be directed to the board president, depending on the nature and complexity of the question. It may or may not be answered during the meeting by the administration. If so, the response would occur after this public portion of the meeting has concluded. Although the board may not respond to all items raised during the public forum, all public comments will be considered. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility, nor will it be liable for any comments made by the members of the public. Please note, if any member of the public becomes disruptive during the meeting, the board president may terminate the participant's statement. Continued disruptions may result in removal from or adjournment of the meeting. Each speaker's statement will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. The public session is open. Is there anyone who'd like to speak?
Good evening, everyone. Susan Pogue, I'm here from Woodruff School today. So I wanted to speak regarding improving the summer curriculum writing that's on the agenda tonight. And I do want to share with you, veteran teachers are upset with the sidebar proposed. A flat hourly fee for an important role as writing curriculum is lacking in foresight. In 2022, I was on a curriculum team for writing. Teachers got paid an hourly wage based on placement on the salary guide. Veteran teachers bring expertise and experience to the role of writing curriculum and should be compensated accordingly. Teachers with advanced degrees bring an even greater level of proficiency. I also noticed on the agenda today, there are other summer positions that are rated on their salary or based on their salary rates. And I know that I would not apply for a role that undervalues my educational knowledge, skills, and dedication to this district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Debbie Torrero, 170 Lenape Lane, Berkeley Heights. Good evening. I'm here to speak tonight regarding the controversy over busing students. What does not seem to make sense to me is the need to strike down policy 8600 when it is beneficial to the district. First, with this policy in place, it positions Berkeley Heights to receive subsidized state funds back to the district. How is this a bad thing? Second, it makes sure that our children that currently live in some of the most dangerous locations in town are brought safely to and from school. And let me point out to the district, the district is responsible for our children from the moment they leave the school doors until our children get home. There's case law in New Jersey where the Board of Education was held liable. So when you are making a decision, be very careful to think about the consequences. Hiring a consulting firm to provide advice on hazardous roads and then ignoring the firm's recommendations can now put the Berkeley Heights School District at risk of being sued for failure to acknowledge their expertise and failing to provide safe measures in place when we have already had them over the past 20 years. Remember, this hazardous road policy is a start and can always be adjusted. So let's talk about some of the reasons provided by the board members that don't support policy 8600. One reason I've heard is because you feel it's not equitable. While I do agree with the importance of equity, none of the locations listed on the hazardous policy appears questionable. They're all hazardous. I've heard concerns about some streets only having specific house numbers listed on them. You are all intelligent men and women. And if you actually looked at these houses and where they're located, you will notice that in some of those streets where their house numbers are listed, that there are no sidewalks near those homes or areas where the child can safely cross the street. Something else to consider are houses on busy roads, which I've heard you mention before. And some of these streets where these house numbers are located are in closer to much more dangerous intersections. For example, Mountain Avenue. On the western part of town where I happen to actually live, Mountain Avenue has many crossing guards and there's much less traffic. On the eastern part of town, Mountain Avenue is much more dangerous. These homes are near Diamond Hill Road and I myself, and I'm sure you wouldn't even attempt to cross that road. It's too dangerous. Another reason provided has been the need to see the data. The big issue with sharing the data, as far as I understand it, is it would open up the door to turn unbiased opinions into a biased opinion that could possibly impact our decisions for ourselves, our neighbors, our friends, etc. The reality is that everyone is going to be able to see the data. We have to have faith in the people hired, that we've hired, the district has hired, that you've hired, and utilize their expert opinions. They are the subject matter experts, not you and not us. They are the subject matter experts. And let's just look at this also. A retired state trooper certified in traffic safety conducted research and rode around our town. I'm sure our local police department would agree with the findings as well. How is this not sufficient enough data for you to make a determination? Why do you need to see the rubrics? I don't understand that. We need to stop roadblocking everything that's going on with this board and start moving forward as a district. In closing, please, I thank you very much for your time and encourage you to do the right thing for our children. Let's not let our egos get in the way of putting our children first and putting them in a position where they could be crossing dangerous roads and giving peace of mind to the parents that live on these dangerous in those dangerous areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on agenda items? Okay. We will move on our agenda. And we're going to be looking at resolutions. Oh, excuse me, we missed this. Okay. Minutes is next. Resolution, all board members, approval of meeting minutes. Resolved that the Board of Education approves the following minutes. Regular session minutes from January 18th, 2024. Executive session minutes from February 26th, 2024. Regular session minutes from March 18th, 2024. Executive session minutes from March 18th, 2024. Regular session minutes from April 12th, 2024. Executive session minutes from April 10th, 2024. And executive session minutes from April 15th, 2024.
Madam President, may I
Yes.
just suggest when giving the vote, if you could kindly just say, make it easier, whatever you're going to say no or abstain, if you could just say that first. And then this way, if it's everything else is a yes, it'll just make things a lot easier.
Thank you. May we have a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Who was the second?
Second.
Thank you.
Yes, roll call. Sure. Discussion?
So I just want to remind everybody that, Anthony, AJ, can I get a confirmation? Like, has the regular session minutes from January 18th been posted to the website?
No, they have not.
So by holding these up, right, that we're also not giving the public the minutes that they want to see, right? By allowing them to review our meetings. So I really do think that we need to move forward. I know everyone has different points on some of these and we've heard them, but we do need to allow the public to be able to read our minutes.
I'm going to give it one more chance, and if I'm not mistaken, I think I've asked counsel that I think that I would need to have or put draft on those or not put them on. Counsel, I'm trying to remember what we had spoken about with these.
With your minutes?
Yes.
I'm sorry, you have your own protocol that you may follow. Nothing would require you to or not post, to approve or not. That's what your practice protocol is for the next Board of Education.
So, Mr. Jaskowicz, I reached out to NJSBA, I looked on their blogs. Minutes don't have to be, especially regular session minutes don't have to be approved to be uploaded. So you can have a draft on them and upload them, or draft and not approved and then upload them. Nothing has to be held up because they weren't approved. Thank you.
But again, there's nothing holding us back from approving them tonight either. We do need to start making decisions and moving forward. I urge everybody to start doing the work. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, a vote, please. And again, please just say no to whatever you want. Oh, Mrs. Jolly,
Well,
discussion?
just a comment to that. I mean, my rationale for some of my votes is to make the minutes more accurate and include the full discussion. I mean, similar to some of the updates that we see here on, I guess we'll get to it eventually, but, that are not, there was an important thing that happened on January 18th, and I don't think it's properly documented.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Hyman?
I'm an abstain from E and F. I was not present for April 10, and yes to the other A, B, C, D, and G.
Ms. Penna?
Yes, but I was not at the April 15th, so I'll abstain from that.
And which letters are you abstaining from?
G.
G, okay. Ms. Akiri?
No on A, B, C, D.
A, B, C, and D.
Yes to the all, yes to the rest of them.
Thank you. Dr. Forager?
No to A, B, C, D. Yes to E, F, G.
Ms. Jolly?
I am a no to A, B, C, and E.
And yes to the rest?
I'm sorry, yes to the rest.
Thank you. Ms. Connor?
No to A and B, yes to everything else.
Thank you. Ms. Stanley?
Yes.
Ms. Bradford?
Yes to all.
Okay, so I have A and B. We don't, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So A and B do not pass. I have for C, 1 and 2, so those would pass. So A and B do not pass. The rest do.
Thank you. We'll move on to superintendent search firm. Resolution A, all board members approve superintendent search firm. Resolve that the Berkeley Heights Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the business administrator, approves the superintendent search firm McPherson and Jacobson in an amount not to exceed $18,500. Motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Discussion.
Hold on one moment. That was Mrs. Connor was the second, and who was the first?
Mrs. Jolly.
I'll make a quick comment just to say, I won't be voting in favor of this firm. Full transparency, I wasn't at, the second session when all firms were interviewed. So take it with a grain of salt. My preference would have been to see the district go with a firm or a partner that has lots of experience with placing New Jersey CSAs. And I don't believe that the firm that's been put forth tonight has that experience. In fact, per their own materials, they've placed more Idaho superintendents than New Jersey. So just my comment.
Any
I
other?
would like a motion to move to executive session because I no longer feel comfortable with this. Do I have a second?
Is there a second on that? Move to executive session.
Tom, speak into the mic.
I believe it's out of order because once you have a motion and a second, you can only apply a subsidiary motion, and this doesn't sound like a subsidiary motion to me. So I would ask that we get a ruling of the chair as to whether, or our parliamentarian, as to whether this is actually a proper motion.
I agree that it's, yeah, I agree that it's not. Okay,
Could you just clarify?
right. Any other discussion? Okay, a vote?
Ms. Jolly?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Can I, sorry.
Yes,
I
Ms.
was so
Penna.
busy focusing on what we were discussing. I'd like to just say, so with having this discussion with this firm on the agenda, my first choice was not this firm. My first choice, can I mention who it was New Jersey School Boards, based on their experience and based on, I know who's actually going to be running it, and I have a lot of experience with the lady who's running it and her expertise. But I'd just like to say that in the interest of moving this forward, because I think it's imperative that we move forward and get a search firm, we need to start it. I just wanted everybody to know that I would be willing to approve it, because I think it's important that we don't come to a deadlock and a 4-4, and then we have to go back again. I think in the interest of it actually moving forward, I think it's important that we do that.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, vote. I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Akiri?
Yes.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Mr. Hyman,
No.
Ms. Penna,
Yes.
Ms. Stanley, Ms. Bradford.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Administration. I'd like to, before we move on to this, yeah, I'd like to just take a 5-minute recess for a question. Yep, a 5-minute recess at this point. So, Mr. Marks, if you'll turn off the remote. Our recess is ended. We are now looking at administration, but I would like to have a motion to amend H. So if you'll turn to H in your blue folders. Okay, I'm going to read the new proposal for the motion for the wording on Amendment 8. Approve, I'm just waiting for Mrs. Khanna. Where's? Okay. Mhm. Do we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? We have 6. Okay. Approve acting principal at Governor Livingston High School. Resolve that the Berkeley Heights Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the acting superintendent, approves the posting for the appointment of an acting principal at Governor Livingston High School to assume principal responsibilities from May 1st, 2024 through May 27th, 2024 in accordance with the BHAA
In accordance,
C-
in
yes,
accordance with
mhm.
the
BHAA, CBA, what is CBA again? Collective Bargaining Agreement pending the approval of resolution under administration G.
pending, what was that again? Sorry.
Pending the agreed, the passage of resolution,
Passage of
resolution under resolution G under administration. Yes, I will repeat it. Approve acting
Mrs.
principal.
Bradford, do you want to wait till everybody's here?
Mhm.
Maybe
They
that
come
way
in?
you don't have to repeat it.
Sure. Mhm. Okay. So I'm making, the motion is to change the wording on administration H. And this will read as follows. Approve acting principal at Governor Livingston High School. Resolve that the Berkeley Heights Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the acting superintendent, approve the posting for the appointment of an acting principal at Governor Livingston High School to assume principal responsibilities from May 1st, 2024 through May 27th, 2024, in accordance with the BHAA Collective Bargaining Agreement and and pending approval of Resolution Administration G.
Is it just a posting or a posting of an appointment? Because I think we're removing the word appointment and replacing it with posting.
Posting for the appointment.
Posting for, of an appointment is what I
Right,
heard. Okay,
yes,
for the,
sorry.
okay.
It says posting for the appointment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
The change in the wording for Resolution H, Administration H.
Change in wording in H.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Or do I?
Well, we're taking a roll call.
Roll call? Okay,
And this is just for this amendment, to be clear.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, roll call, Mr. Secretary?
Can we have discussion? Can we ask questions or do we have to go directly to roll call?
You can have discussion.
Yes, do you have a question, Mrs.
Yes,
Curie?
yeah, so why are we amending this? Like,
Because your administrator's collective bargaining agreement has a clause. Your administrator's collective bargaining agreement has a clause that pertains to this issue. And by having proceeded with the way it was, number one, the posting clarifies because no individual is stated, and that wasn't clear. But number two, the stipend amount potentially conflicts with the clause in the collective bargaining agreement. And so that would be governing, and that would be consistent with what has been negotiated with the administrators of this district.
okay, so will that, I'm just curious because there are two agenda items here. The other one also has a stipend, so is that also bound, which is I? No, okay, just clarifying.
That posting is for a teacher to serve in that capacity, different agreement.
So no dependency, no BHEA, nothing.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
Thank you, Mrs. Curie. Mrs. Stanley?
Wait, there's still, isn't.
This is the
Mhm.
motion on the floor.
Yet on, you didn't vote yet. You didn't vote.
And my mic wasn't on anyway, so it wasn't a good.
Okay.
Discussion's finished?
Yes. Mr. Sec.
We didn't vote, we didn't take the roll call yet. There was discussion.
Mhm. Okay, discussion on amending the wording for administration H has ended, and we're going to go to a vote.
Mrs. Connor?
So this is just for the amendment?
Correct. The one that you
Yes.
made the motion for.
Yes, so yes, the answer is yes.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Curie,
I'm still confused, so I'll abstain.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Ms. Jolly,
Yes.
Ms. Penna,
Yes.
Ms. Stanley, Ms. Bradford.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I
So-
would like to make a motion. I move to reconsider superintendent search firm resolution A, approve superintendent search firm.
Can a motion be made now when we've already moved on and voted?
Yeah.
I'm asking Mark Wenzel.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
We've passed it and we've already voted on it, so no.
No.
Then that- You didn't make the motion to reconsider. I thought you said to amend.
No, I made a motion to reconsider superintendent search firm resolution A, all bid members.
So doesn't it require a 48-hour notice? This was never,
That's not new business. That's new business.
Yeah, I'm gonna help her out here.
Hmm.
I'm gonna move to reconsider the appointment of the search firm. I voted with the majority, so I can do that.
All right, so we have a reconsideration. Oh, a second, yes.
So Tom is the first now, and Mrs. Stanley is the second.
Okay. So now we have a reconsideration of the superintendent search firm, Resolution A, all board members. Approve superintendent search firm. Resolve that the Berkeley Heights Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the business administrator, approves the superintendent search firm, McPherson and Jacobson, in an amount not to exceed $18,500. Yes, Mrs. Penna, discussion?
Sorry. Can I ask why we're doing that? Just would be interested to know why the recommendation for reconsideration.
After discussion during our recess, some other board members and I realized that there are some concerns that we have with this firm. And we want to maybe reconsider and see how everyone else feels.
So by reconsidering, we are eliminating possibly this search firm. Is there a replacement search firm?
I believe so, yes.
So we have a motion first for this one to reconsider, and then possibly another motion for another search firm.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this works, but maybe Mark can help us.
It'd be better if you just vote to eliminate that one and then vote to replace it with another one?
Point of order. I'm not sure what is going on. We had a resolution. We had a conversation in the exec. We came out. There was a resolution. We all voted. I'm not sure what's going on anymore. We seem to have gone back on the agenda items. I mean, I don't get it.
It's not great, but it's legal according to Robert's rules. We are allowed to rescind a motion already voted upon.
Yes, it's allowed, but
Okay.
where my question, I want to know the whole point of having a straw poll, setting agenda in exec so that we are all, is the mic working? Okay, so we had a clear agenda on exec. We took close to.
Careful, what we don't want to discuss what happened in
I
executive
am
session.
very well, Mrs. Bradford. I'm just asking, we took 2 weeks and we discussed about it. We arrived at a notion here. We have already voted on it. And now we are publicly challenging it, which might open us for, the other firm might say, what's happening? The one that we just approved. So
You can reconsider, but your point is you want to make sure you're doing it for a very good reason. But yet you have the ability under Robert's rules, as Dr. Forger and Ms. Stanley has pointed out. I left my copy of Robert's rules at home, unfortunately, but you have your sheet over there. But you have the book, thank you. But you can reconsider. You just have to have.
what is the very good reason? I'm just
I'm not saying
saying
there is one. I'm just agreeing with you.
that we might be opening us up for like more legal issues because we just had a thorough process. We arrived at a conclusion and we voted.
Just say, yeah, no conclusions are made in executive session. You have discussions in executive
Conclusion
session.
here, I'm
Right.
saying.
I'm just
we-
clarifying for the record.
Yes.
Is the motion just to reconsider, or is it to reconsider and put forth an alternate firm in the same breath or something like that?
That would be my question, is
Yeah,
if we're
so
going to
again,
do
you
that.
have to reconsider first, like we have to get permission to reconsider first, and then I believe me and Tom would amend it. I believe he might have to amend it because I was not in the majority vote in this. So it'd be to amend it.
So we have a motion on the floor to reconsider Superintendent Search Firm, Resolution A, all board members, A. And we had a second. We've had discussion. Mrs. Jolly?
Just a question. I mean, is there some new information that came to light that we should be aware of, or are we reconsidering just based on the information we have already? Was there something new that popped up? And
No, nothing new.
Would we, when we make this reconsideration motion, would we be putting forward one of the other firms that were in discussion in exec session? I'm just making sure that there's nothing else, you know.
So if there is no new information, I'm trying to understand, Tom, the basis for why you would move this motion. We've heard ad nauseum for the last, I don't know how many meetings, how we need to move ahead in the interest of time, getting work done and all the good stuff that's associated with that. We just made the motion, we had the conversation. I'm trying to better understand what has changed in the 5 minutes.
So I can say from my point of view, I feel like my voice was not heard when we had discussions. I have concerns. I mentioned them at the last exec session. I mentioned them again today. Again, it's confidential on some of the discussions that we have, so I can't speak too freely when we're in public session.
I get that. So we heard the concerns. We sort of took that into consideration. I
I'm not
imagine
sure
as
today. Did you
as
hear my concerns today? I'm not sure you did.
we all had the same conversation in the exec. I think we all heard the same thing. So what I'm trying to better understand is what has changed in the last 5 minutes for us to have to go back in time versus moving forward.
I believe we have some concerns on expense. I believe we have some concerns on experience. And I think that we need to at least vote on this and see if that the majority can come to a conclusion.
So so basically, we're setting a precedent that if our voice is not heard or if we're not happy with something that has been passed, I would like this to be documented, Mrs. Bradford, that this should be allowed. Things. No, I would like to repeat it because there seems to be something wrong with it. So all I'm
again-
saying, I still have the floor. I'm just saying, if we are going to allow this to happen today on April 18th, 2024, I hope as the board president, you're not going to be biased, you're going to be neutral, and you will allow this. When a majority votes, and if somebody feels that their voice has not been heard, they're unhappy with the decision, and they're going to move a motion and amend it, you should be allowing it. If it's a yes, then let's go ahead.
In fairness, the majority has seconded it. So, I mean, this would be a moot point if not for that. So
I'm just saying,
Also,
next time I
you're-
don't want it to be shut down because most of the time, last meeting, I was speaking.
no, you're making
She-
a good point.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, last meeting when the board, Madam President allowed one board member to speak and give her comments about poor form. And when I tried to address it, I was shut down. So as long as we are allowing this, it should be allowed in future. Thank you.
A reminder that Robert's rule says that the person who makes the motion had to be in the majority vote, which Tom was, which is why I couldn't make the motion and him second. He had to make the motion and I second.
So we have a motion on the floor.
I also want to say that unless there's some discussion that would disparage one of the firms that would require an executive discussion or require attorney-client privilege, this discussion could happen in public too, or should happen in public as to why a firm would be preferred over another firm, or why just one firm would be preferred, or why there'd be a consideration for doing this. That doesn't have, that should be a public discussion.
So we have a vote to reconsider.
Still haven't heard a reason to reconsider. So what are we talking about? Tom, I really want to hear your point as to why you put this motion to reconsider on the table.
Well, actually, I just wanted to give some people, including myself, a chance to vote on another firm, a different one. This firm that we're picking is not my first choice. And Jordan did raise a concern that they only have done one New Jersey district. And I don't know if I should get into the details, but there's another firm that I thought had a lot more, had been very successful. And that would have been my first choice. So I just wanted to see if people would maybe switch their views.
So I'm just trying to clarify on the motion. This motion is to reconsider a different firm. We're not naming anybody. And we will have an ability to say, let's open up the superintendent search further so we can look at other firms. If there are concerns, I don't want to be limited to just these two, because originally I did convey my concern because there were 8 firms that reached out to us. There was one firm that we did not even respond to. So I'm just saying, out of 8, we only gave we removed 4. We as a board agreed to listen and allow board presentations from only 4 superintendent search firms. We completely ignored a nationwide search firm that has written to us. So I'm open to reconsidering, but I am not going to be, I think it's not going to be fair to force our hand and say, out of the 9, we shortlisted 4. Out of the 4, we came up with 1. And yeah,
Yes. Right. We're going to have to focus just on what's going on the order here. So we have a vote to reconsider. Mr. Secretary, will you do a roll call, please? Vote to reconsider Resolution A, all board members approve superintendent search firm.
Dr. Forager,
Yes.
Mrs. Stanley,
Yes.
Ms. Akiri,
No.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Ms. Jolly, Ms. Khanna,
No,
Ms. Penna,
they were not my first choice, so I would be interested in reconsideration. So yes, see who else is going to be included.
Ms. Bradford.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Do we have another vote? Motion?
I make a motion to open up the superintendent search firms for another round, so we can look up at additional superintendent search firms instead of what we just received.
Just for clarity, does the reconsideration, I think you'd want to clarify that if that's the direction you're heading in, that you're rescinding the vote. You don't need to rescind. You've passed the motion to reconsider, and then that vote then is no longer extant, right? That vote no longer exists because you opened up reconsideration. Is that what you're saying by your shaking of your head, Ms. Stanley?
Okay.
Or to reconsider or to select another firm or
Talking to the mic,
rescind.
Ken. Talking to the mic.
I would like to just advise the board that we have got to move on this. For the superintendent search firm, we have waited way too long for this, and we have got to move on in choosing a superintendent search firm so we could get the public input on this. We have voted now to reconsider. Is there a motion now?
I moved a motion and I'm looking for a second.
Is
to
there a
open up
second?
the superintendent search firm
Second.
process.
Mhm.
Open up the search to more firms. Yeah, yeah. So can I clarify, are we talking RFP or what are we talking
Yeah,
in terms of?
let's do like, I'm just saying, open up the superintendent search firms again. We basically, there was no end date. We didn't do any RFPs like well-run districts did, which is the route we wanted to go. We got 9 firms. I feel this is not a fair process.
Just to be
that-
clear, 7.
7 firms, okay.
Okay, from January, Mr. Jeskovich, because
7.
yes. So I have a second. Let's go for a roll call. Let's open it up. Maybe, yeah.
I would just ask that you add to this, to rescind the vote on McPherson and to
No, but
Well,
the
we
motion
ha-
is
we-
on the floor, Mr. We can always rescind after
Mhm.
that.
So we have a discussion.
Oh, was, no.
Hold
there
on.
is- the-
Mhm.
according to
Sai
Robert's-
made a motion to open up the superintendent search firm to a broader set of firms.
And that will take us months.
Well,
I have a
clearly we
second.
made a choice right now and,
Mhm.
and then it was taken away in 5 minutes.
So we
So
have a second.
Clearly,
Yeah, we
there
have,
is
we have a
appetite.
second. We have a first and a second.
Clearly have an appetite to make this, process long. I thought we didn't want to do that, but there is majority opinion that we want to do that. So let's do that in the spirit of actually, doing a proper search.
I think we have done a proper search. But we have a motion to open up the superintendent search firm again.
Why is it not a legal motion? There was no motion made, though. We reconsidered.
reconsider, you still haven't reconsider, opened up the floor to reconsider. That yet you still have the selection, the vote still stands, you both voted to reconsider, you haven't voted what you're gonna do with that reconsideration. To jump to considering somebody else before you decide what you're doing with McPherson seems to me to be putting the cart before the horse. Sorry?
Do we need a 5-minute recess to look it up?
I don't know if you can take one, like, you have the motion, it's been seconded.
Mhm. Okay, open superintendent search firm. Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Akiri,
Yes.
Ms. Khanna,
Yes.
Dr. Forager, Mr. Hyman,
No.
Ms. Charlie,
No.
Ms. Penna,
No.
Ms. Stanley, Ms. Bradford.
No.
Motion fails.
Do we have another motion to approve another search firm?
And rescind McPherson.
And
I
rescind?
think we need time to, see, we just publicly, I don't want to do any motions for any appointments today until I get a written legal opinion that what we are doing right now is not opening up for opening up for legal issues. I don't want any search firm coming back to the district and saying, because of concerns from one board member and change of mind or not being heard, I think that is, I want a written legal memo from both our attorneys. We have a board attorney, we have an alternate attorney. I want a first opinion and a second opinion before we go ahead and appoint somebody else. Thank you.
We have received legal advice. Mrs. Penna?
Well, also, and Dr. Forger and Robert, who was in the majority, and Robert's rules is clear. If you're in the majority, you're not bound as you're a deliberative body and you're in this current session deliberating. There's nothing that would preclude you. Robert's rules is about having orderly deliberative meetings and allowing everybody's voice to be heard. And because a vote was taken 15 minutes or 20 minutes prior, and there's a reconsideration by someone who was in the majority, it clearly provides for the opportunity
So
to
all I'm-
reconsider.
So all I'm saying is whatever we have seen legal opinion given by you sometimes, with all due respect, as not as accurate as we would have liked. So all I'm saying is I'm open to reconsidering. I just need an alternate board attorney's opinion so that
Mrs.
we don't
Penna?
open us up.
Sorry, Mrs. Akiri, we have we have a ruling. Okay.
What ruling? Excuse me,
We
Mrs.
have
Bradford. It
legal-
is
No, you have a
one-
board president who's running a meeting and you've stated your opinion, which you're entitled to, and she's entitled to proceed with the meeting, and other people are still entitled to make motions, even though you may disagree with them.
Yeah, all I'm saying is, can we?
Thank you, Mrs. Akiri. We're moving forward.
So
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to put New Jersey school boards on. Can I do that? Or the search firm?
Do you have a amount not to exceed?
I believe it was 12,000, was that? What was that there?
14?
I brought this.
What was
to
the,
you
I'm
just in case, 'cause I-
trying to remember what they quoted.
And
It-
Mrs.
What
Penna,
was it?
will you also put in that motion to rescind the vote for McPherson?
Yes.
Okay.
We're just getting an amount not to exceed.
I think.
Just to note, the top tier for school boards is, which again, there's lots of checkoffs in terms of what's in there, is 15,000.
Okay.
Okay.
That includes
Not to exceed
guidance on
15,000.
strategic plan. of course.
Okay. Not to
Thank you.
exceed 15,000.
Okay.
I'll second it.
So we now have, under Superintendent Search Firm, Resolution A, all board members approve Superintendent Search Firm. Resolved that the Berkeley Heights Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Business Administrator, approves the Superintendent Search Firm, New Jersey School Board Association, first rescinding McPherson and Jacobson in an amount not to exceed 18,500. Two, Superintendent Search Firm, New Jersey School Board Association in an amount not to exceed 15,000. That's the motion. We have a second.
Yes,
And-
we have Mrs. Penna and Mr. Hyman.
Yes, a vote, please, Mr. Secretary.
Mrs. Penna. Mr. Hyman.
Yes.
Ms. Akiri.
No.
Dr. Forger. Ms. Charlie.
Yes.
Ms. Connor.
No.
Ms. Stanley.
Yes.
Ms. Bradford.
Yes.
Motion passes.
So we have gone back and we've looked at a superintendent search firm and we have rescinded McPherson and Jacobson. And we now have approved New Jersey School Board Association in an amount not to exceed $15,000.
And we did that all in one motion there where we rescinded and we approved,
Correct.
correct?
We are moving ahead with administration, resolutions A through M, all board members. We are going to break apart E, approve a report of acting superintendent. Case number 260758, CMS. We are going to vote on that separately.
We,
Did
okay, I
you
just wanted to make
jump?
sure we're on administration, just wanted to make sure.
I'm
So
sorry,
we-
Mrs. Bradford, did you skip over policies?
No. Okay, we need a motion for resolutions A through M, all board members. Second,
Second.
thank you. Discussion? Mr. Secretary, a vote on resolutions A through
Yeah.
M.
We have
Oh, I'm
discussion,
sorry.
right.
Was there a discussion? Mrs. Jolly?
Sure. So I just wanted to, speak to policy 8600. I know the community is very passionate about the subject, and I think, I've been hearing both sides of the conversation, and I appreciate Mr. Nixon's, support of this policy. But I cannot be in favor of this policy, and I'd like to also address all of the reasons why in terms of equity, safety, traffic, and state aid. Equity being the first one. So back in March of 2023, during the budget meeting, I think Mrs. Stanley herself had raised the question of inequity in busing, where some families were paying for busing, some were not, without a documented rationale. So, fast forward to a year and we're here now. The consulting firm was hired maybe 6 to 7 months after that March 23rd meeting to review, our transportation landscape. We have their presentation. After the presentation, they had sent us a rubric. Again, it's had Scotch planes on it, so for whatever that's worth. But, for me, right now, we don't have evidence of that how that rubric was being used because we can't see our roads on that rubric with a score. I think it's just as important to understand, why a road is hazardous, and so we have that. And I think, some you can definitely, you could use your judgment, but I don't think Mr. Nixon should be driving around trying to figure out the scoring on the rubric himself. I think it's also just as important to understand why a particular road was deemed not hazardous. So I think we're kind of in the same place where we have a list of roads, and at least in my opinion, again, others feel they have enough of the data, but in my opinion, we have a list of roads, again, without a documented rationale. So kind of feels like with, essentially the same bus routes. So I went back and took a closer look at the, just one other comment, referencing the meeting that Mr. Nixon, Mrs. Stanley were at. Mrs. Stanley wrote in her note to the board that regarding why they wouldn't share the numbers, right? They stated that sharing the numbers would only cause people to question the validity of their line of what is hazardous, which is what we were trying to avoid by hiring them. And to me, that is a very circular, kind of logic, right? I think they should be able to show us their objective analysis. We may agree or disagree, but at least it's consistent for all of the roads in Berkeley Heights. But they didn't even show the scoring to the attendees, as far as I understand, but please correct me if I'm wrong. So then we have their presentation, and I took a look at the presentation because that is the physical artifact that we were given. So this was the presentation from February 26th. On page 6, they stated under the methodology section that, they paid special attention to the following areas, and there were 5 of them: Snyder Horseshoe, Mountain Avenue, Springfield Avenue, Emerson Lane, Diamond Hill Road. On page 8 of said presentation, under assessment finding summary, they said all 5 studied exceeded hazardous points on the rubric. However, Springfield Avenue, if you look at the list, is not on the list. So again, I wonder, what changed between when they presented it? Did they rescore it? Did the criteria change? I don't know. So I would also like to see what the scoring would have looked like for Park Avenue and Plainfield, all also very busy streets. And as we know, there was recently an accident in Park Avenue where, now the township is taking another look at, making it safer. So, so we have the list, and and the reason why I think it's important to understand why things are not why certain roads are not, are to see that rubric, to understand how they are hazardous. So what are the remediation plans? Like, how do we know how to fix them? How do we know how to get them off the list? And this is especially important, right? To understand why some are hazardous, how do we get them off the list? Now, especially with the assumption that hazardous busing is free, right? If you don't have the data, and you're giving free busing, I don't see how that is being equitable. Now, with respect to safety, the policy itself really does not even fully address that, because if you take a look at the language, it says the board may provide transportation to and from school. So the policy does not require the district to provide busing for hazardous roads. So if we truly feel that safety is is important, which it is, then the policy language should be adjusted to say shall. The regulation states that the board will approve a list of hazardous routes and in the district requiring the courtesy busing of students and the criteria used in designating the hazardous routes. Our policy does not include the criteria. The policy also doesn't state that the busing for these hazardous routes is free. The law does not require free busing for hazardous routes. And if there are budget constraints, the board may pull non-mandated busing. The policy doesn't prevent it. And going back to that meeting in March of 2023, I think Mrs. Stanley reminded me that she was willing to pull the non-mandated busing because of a budget constraint, right? We were in the fiscal cliff. So this doesn't guarantee, this policy and the way it's worded does not guarantee busing for these hazardous routes. With respect to traffic, obviously nobody wants more traffic, but then we need a holistic traffic study done. I mean, the reason for the traffic, in my opinion, now is because we had reconfiguration. So where you had kids who could walk to schools are now being driven to schools because they have to go further. So, personally, I'm a little frustrated as well that, we wasted a lot of time since that initial discussion about doing it right back in March of 2023. Why wasn't there a community survey? Why wasn't the community surveyed about their transportation needs, how their kids are currently getting to school, and why, and why, right? Like maybe some people can get the bus, but they prefer to drive their kids. And also like asking the community, would they be willing to pay for busing? Like important information to have if the consultants are doing a holistic review of our transportation landscape. So the question, I guess, is where do we go from here? To make this equitable, right? So we could, number one, there are three equitable options in my mind. One, you can offer free busing to all non-remote kids, but that's likely too expensive. It's not going to fit within our budget parameters. You could offer subscription busing to all non-remote kids. Maybe we will need, like right now, there isn't a built-in assumption that subscription busing is only for those empty seats on mandated routes. So if you have a bus that's, filled by qualified kids, right, then any empty seat is up for subscription busing. Why couldn't you offer subscription busing for everyone that's non-mandated, and then based on the response, create the routes that you need? We have new software that's more efficient. We could do that, right? In that respect, everybody is treated in the same way without any subjectivity. So, I guess the third option, and which was discussed, I think in the finance committee, would be to look at longer term ideas such as, staggered times, which I understand is not feasible at this time or in short order due to our dismissal times, but maybe ultimately can be worked through. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Jolly. Any other discussion?
I just want to add on to what Natasha said, right? If I go back a year, probably this time last year, maybe a little bit sooner, we started this conversation because there was no explanation of who was getting free busing in the district. And I'm talking about the non-mandated busing. everybody who was either within 2 miles or 2.5 miles. There was no clear explanation as to who's getting the free busing versus who's having to pay. A year later, transportation consultants came in, did an assessment. They've given us what I can only say is a bit of a black box and said, here are the list of roads, some 65 odd list of roads in the district that are deemed or are, some portion of those are hazardous. Again, there is no information on what is the ranking, what is the scoring of these roads on their rubric? Is there a remedial measure that can be put in place to alleviate, why they might be hazardous? You could put a crossing guard, or are there some other measures that can be put in place? We just don't know how they ranked and why they ranked the way they did in order to think about it. And just taking a step back, I'm not sure if we have considered the longer term ramification of having such a policy. And I can only go back 3 years. When we did the reconfiguration of the schools, we've essentially exacerbated the problem of students who are looking for transportation to go to their schools. You had previously 4 schools in the district, rather, I should say 3 schools in the district for elementary students, and most of them could walk. We have now created a system where you're forcing students from one side of the town to be either bused, driven to the schools, or risk walking about 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And these are 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. So again, this, when the redistricting was done, none of these concerns were probably contemplated in the way the decision was made. And I agree 100% to the points that Natasha made on, if we think about how are we going to explain this, and the policy has a clause that there is an annual review of these hazardous roads. If we don't know the basis of calling them hazardous today, I don't see how anybody could go and next year look at the same list and say, yes, no, maybe, or there's a different answer.
So I would say that there's a lot of inaccurate information in some of those topics. For instance, redistricting, you said it's 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders that have to walk, but what about the kindergartners, 1st and 2nd graders that have to walk to Woodruff? Right, so you're picking and choosing to kids that are important, but there are kids on
No,
Sutton,
sorry.
excuse me.
They're the same.
I have the
It's-
floor.
it's the
I have the
same.
floor.
So-
Mrs.
I
Conrad,
have the
please
floor.
let Mrs. Stanley finish.
So when you're talking about a kindergartner on Sutton who has to walk to Woodruff, right?
Yes.
So, excuse me.
I said, yes, keep moving.
You have interrupted multiple times,
I'm
Pamela,
sorry,
please,
but-
Keep,
okay?
keep moving.
Last
Excuse
meeting,
me,
Point of
Mrs.
order.
Stanley has the floor.
I hope you apply the rules
Mrs.
all the time.
Stanley
Yeah.
has the floor.
Just by raising your voice doesn't change facts.
So again, right, we're talking about multiple kids having to walk 2 miles, right? But that's not really the traffic that was addressed by the police department's letter. They specifically said GL and Mary Kay McMillan. Mary Kay McMillan has had traffic problems for years, and hopefully when we do a referendum, we can work on that traffic problem to build more ways to get traffic into the street so it doesn't block Plainfield Avenue. Mountain Avenue. So again, right, I think that we're taking one subject and trying to make it work for this one. Also, a lot of the scoring of the roads could have been discussed multiple times. Natasha brought up certain roads that she had questions on, but again, we had a policy meeting on 4/11. This policy was at the March 18th meeting, right? So in between then, some of these questions could be answered. On top of the fact that the transportation consultants came in specifically to help you walk through some of the scoring, and we did not attend those meetings. But as far as it goes with hazardous route criteria, we do have the rubric. It has been fixed to have Berkeley Heights Police Department listed on it, so it's the same one. Do you want me to hand it out so everyone can have a copy? Because you have it all in your email, but I thought maybe you weren't able to read it because we can go through. So section 1 is roadway. We have speed limit. If it's 25 or below, it's 5 points. If it's above 25, it's 10 points. If it's above 35, it's 15 points. If it's above 45, it's 20 points, right? So any road can be looked at and scored right there. Our transportation department can do that. They can work with the police department. Our superintendents can do that anytime. And then we can look at it, right? So this has been looked at by multiple people, right? Again, when we're looking at traffic volume, because this is still under roadway, we're talking 200 vehicles or less per hour is 0 points. More than 200, but less than 300 vehicles per hour is 10 points. More than 300 vehicles per hour is 15 points. Visual obstructions, no obstructions is 0. Total or permanent obstructions is 5 points awarded for each obstruction, up to 15 points, right? These are very detailed things that our transportation department and our district can use to continue going through these routes, right? The hazardous routes is not 65 roads. In fact, right, the hazardous routes are mostly for elementary and CMS middle school. We're talking Diamond Hill, McMain, the bottom of Horseshoe, which is a blind curve coming up from Plainfield, right? When you come up from Plainfield, it's a blind curve, meaning the people on the south side, right, have to try to walk across a blind curve, which is why it is on the list of hazardous roads, which again could have been answered at the transportation meeting. The west section of Emerson, right, because that area does not have sidewalks, but on top of that, it does not have anywhere on the flat side of the road to walk, right? So most of the areas that, like Snyder Avenue, it has flat areas for a child to walk, even in the areas that don't have sidewalks, which again is why it is not on the list. Now, this transportation department gave our district tons of areas that need improvement, right? And they have worked with the DPW to try to look at some of those areas. But the ones that made it onto the hazardous roads list are not something that we can just add a crossing guard or add a walkway. These are areas that are tremendously dangerous and that we don't have a simple fix or not an expensive fix, right? So when you're talking Diamond Hill, you would literally have to stop the exits for 78 on Diamond Hill to make it semi-safe road, right? That is what's causing it to be a hazard, right? And Mr. Nixon, when he spoke to the policy committee, he said that as you go up to McMain, right, you get off of 78 and people want to go down the hill, they go to McMain and make a U-turn, right? So they call that a U-turn road, right? And that becomes dangerous because people are trying to do something illegal in that section. So again, those are the 4 main roads we're talking about for elementary. Now you add roads to those because there are roads that have no other exit but those roads, right? So you're talking North Road on Emerson. You cannot get off of North Road, but except for that section of Emerson. So that makes sense. When I brought this up last year, which again, we were talking about losing teachers, I did have budget concerns and I thought that this should go because we were going to cut teachers and see class sizes go up. We are lucky enough that we did not have to do that. Now, however, when you're talking 65 roads, you're looking more now at the high school, right? The high school is Diamond Hill. Everyone on the other side of Diamond Hill now, right? It's in hazardous areas because they have to cross Diamond Hill, right? So a lot of these questions have been answered over and over and over, right? The other section for the high school is the west side of Glenside and the north side of Mountain, right? Those are areas. The north side of Mountain is a very dangerous area because these cars go very fast, right? It's not like the other areas of Mountain where it's closed, right? This is at open up, people get past South Street and they go much faster. Now, again, the police department has written us a letter saying they are very worried about the detrimental traffic that we will see in our community at GL and Mary Kay McMillan if we don't have busing. I also would like to say it's that subscription busing that has been talked about multiple times in the finance committee. And we have said over and over that it's not fiscally responsible to have a 40K to 80K bus with 54 students on it with subscription only busing, because we will not make up that amount, right? On top of the fact that we would have to have that contract before we can even get the students to pay. So again, that has been discussed multiple times. Now, the idea that we have 100%, right, subscription busing, again, is a very interesting idea. And I think most people in the district will be like, yes, right, because it's universal busing, right? We can semi-offer some kind of busing to every student. The problem with that becomes that it's 42 buses to bus our entire district. We currently, in the finance committee, know that we only have 12 buses, right? So 12 buses, and we can barely staff those. So I have no idea how this idea of 42 buses will come in, on top of the fact that that's not realistic for September, right? So even if we want to look at this, this would be a long-term plan. Now, when we're talking about the bus, right, and we're talking about equity, this is making it more equitable. The way to do this is to get rid of the students who are not on hazardous roads, who are currently getting busing this year. We know that there are approximately 60 students who are getting bused this year who don't live on a hazardous road. That is unfair busing, right? These other areas that you're talking about is not unfair busing. There's realistic busing. Now, can we charge in the future? Absolutely. Are we prepared to do that this year? No, we are not. But we can do things in the future, but we
Why
can't
not?
do that. Excuse me. We
Why
can't.
not? Talk to why we are not prepared to charge them right now.
Because one, it hasn't been budgeted. Two, we know that we can get reimbursed by the state. So I'm not going to charge somebody $1,000 if we get $500 back per kid. That is wrong. On top of the fact that if we go out to rebid, we will not have buses to put these students on. And we have been told that in the finance committee multiple times. So again, I think that we really need to think about this and make sure that we're being realistic for September. Long term, we can continue to make changes. We can change this policy every year if we want to. But this is September, and we have to make this decision and let families know what's going on. And I think that lots of people have been telling you stuff that you don't want to hear. And that is causing you to have some issues because you are not being honest and open. Now,
Okay,
again,
point of order.
Excuse me.
Point of order.
I'm
Excuse me.
sorry, but you,
Point of
Okay,
order.
excuse
okay.
me.
If this is going to delve into
Yes.
personal attack.
Yes,
I would-
Mrs. Stanley,
would
let's
just
not
say
talk
stop.
about that. Mrs. Khanna, thank you.
Let's have a content related debate. I'm all for it,
Mrs.
but let's
Khanna,
not do what you are about to do.
Mrs. Stanley has the floor. She has been
Ms.
advised
Khanna.
not to talk about personal.
I was not trying to be personal. I was trying to be about the committee because as you said, right, subscription busing, we could open that up, but it's been told to you in committee that we cannot do that. That is not an option, especially for next year. And I think that you need to be willing to say that because it has been said, and you are the chair of the Finance and Facilities Committee, and the district has said it over and over.
Point of order.
Okay,
That's not a point of order.
This,
It's a concern of a
This-
person in debate.
we are talking about the policy.
okay.
Let's just debate the content of the policy.
Unfortunately,
Stanley,
Finance
are
and
you almost
Facility has
done?
spent 2.5 hours on the
Point of
busing,
order.
and
If we are
again,
going
you
to
have
talk
not-
and debate
you
the
have not
policy,
given the
let us
information to
stick,
people.
Mrs.
let us
Stanley,
stick
can you
to this.
finish?
If you want to
Thank you.
get into attacking people,
Mrs.
let's
Khanna,
do it elsewhere.
I've already spoken with Mrs. Stanley. She is finished. There's no other discussion. We're going to bring it up. Okay,
I have a few points.
okay.
Okay.
Do you want to go
Mrs.
ahead? Yeah.
Mrs.
So-
Akiri,
Yeah. So we have a corrected rubric. We paid $12,000 to a so-called expert. I wanted to ask that so-called expert, but I was not allowed to ask in the essence of moving the meeting by you, Madam President, is how many peer-reviewed papers has this expert published? How are we, let me finish. So we spent $12,000. I've looked at their contract. They're supposed to give us their output, which is basically on what, based on which criteria have they identified these 65 roads. Unfortunately, instead of putting something in writing, I've asked in multiple emails to the acting superintendent, to Mr. Jaskovich, can I see email communication from this transportation consultant to the district or anybody in the district, which is so when we hear the district is recommending it, the district is not saying it. Is it transportation that we're talking about? Is it Mr. Nixon that we're talking about? Is it Mr. Jaskovich? Who is the district? So let's stop talking in code. And I want to understand, is this consultant in a breach of his contract? Because his contract clearly says He's going to come here, analyze our streets, spend time in Berkeley Heights. It's a retired state trooper who came here, gave us a presentation. According to the contract, he's supposed to give us data. Unfortunately, instead of giving us data, he used old maps, which many of the residents have complained about. We couldn't identify what the color coding was. There was a lot of speculation on who color coded the roads. And then the policy committee chair said there is a closed door meeting where the transportation consultant, where we have spent $12,000, is going to answer questions. So if they were going to come here, the so-called experts were going to answer questions, maybe they should have come here and done a follow-up of their February 26th meeting, allowed the whole community, because we paid for them. Those $12,000 were taxpayer dollars. They should have answered everybody's questions instead of saying, we don't share our data. If that is not what their contract says, they are in breach of contract. And we are expected to believe now what we just heard, as in response to where is the rubric, where is the data? Oh, they've given us a rubric. Anybody can fill it. So why did we pay them $12,000 and waste our time? If we were going to spend our time, if Mr. Nixon was going to spend our time, anybody can fill it. Mr. Nixon can fill it, the building principal can fill it. So we are going to go on this expedition of, let's take the rubric of a so-called expert. I don't know how many peer review.
Mrs. Secretary, are you almost done?
I would like, did you interrupt like that to Mrs. Stanley?
Yes, I did ask her if she was almost done.
Yes, so I'm not done. So I'm looking at the time. I haven't spent as much time as Mrs. Stanley, so I would like to continue. And I have not seen you asking other board members who did speak lengthy comments to interrupt. So this is all being recorded, and I hope you are aware that this could be considered discrimination. When you treat one board member differently, in Robert's rules, a presiding officer has to act neutral, unbiased.
Mrs. Secretary, I'm asking you to finish.
Yes, please. So if you wouldn't interrupt me, I would have finished. So that's my first point. And how did we got a letter from Mr. Nixon from Berkeley Heights Police Department, which said that they have concerns about traffic on MKM and GL only. And I did talk to Mr. Nixon and I asked him if he can go and spend maybe 15 minutes in front of Woodruff, in front of Hughes, in front of CMS at dismissal time, and look at it and tell us if traffic is not a concern in front of those schools. I used to be an emergency medical responder. I used to ride the ambulance. And I know if there is an emergency on Briarwood West in front of Woodruff, or if there is an emergency, God forbid somebody has a stroke in front of Hughes or on Mountain,
Please
going
stick to the
off
point.
So there is no way an ambulance can get through. So I question this report that has come from the Berkeley Heights Police Department saying traffic is a concern only at MKM at GL. Traffic is a concern everywhere. If traffic and safety are a concern everywhere, maybe we haven't yet adopted our final budget. Let's offer free busing for everybody. Let's look at cutting some numbers. We're sitting on 4 million in, I think, surplus. We have capital reserves. Let's make it equitable for all. Our district goals are diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why are we excluding somebody? Let's make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Security. Are we ready for a vote?
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Just,
Mrs. Jolly.
I wanted to address the state aid, right? Currently, the state aid formula is quite complex, and the if you designate hazardous kids, they would get included into the incentive factor calculation. No one has presented to us how much, what impact this is going to be, right? Like there is no, right, we don't know. We're just saying that so it's embedded in the state aid number. It's not a direct refund for hazardous busing. So I just want to make that clear. It's not
Thank you.
quite that straightforward. So
Thank you, Mrs. Jolly.
there is a bill that is pending, right? It's in assembly that would, that first of all would have the state commissioner, someone at the, at the state level, work with, designate 3 different types of hazardous routes, and then work with the local police to define that for the district. So, but at present, that is just in, I don't know, some committee. So there's nothing to directly refund the district for hazardous busing, but the kids would go into a calculated formula.
Thank you very much. We're going to end discussion now and move on to the vote. Mr. Secretary, just a reminder, please, that Mr. Hyman, you are not able to vote on policy 866 because Mountainside does not receive transportation from Berkeley Heights.
Correct.
Miss-
One question, are we,
Mhm.
in terms of the item within E that you broke out, how are we voting on that? Is that a separate letter or is that
Yes.
we just,
Why don't
address
we
it
do
separately?
A through D, then we'll do E, and then we'll finish with the rest. Okay, so resolution A through D, all board members except for Mr. Hyman from Mountainside on policy 8600. So A, B, C, and D.
So we're just voting on A to D.
Correct.
And we had the motion from Mrs. Stanley and Mrs. Jolly.
Was there a second?
Yeah, Mrs. Stanley was the motion. Mrs. Jolly was the second.
Okay.
but, I mean, the motion was for all. I don't know if we care. Or we
Oh,
need to-
okay. Do we need to remotion then for A through D? Sure.
So moved.
Let's remotion for A through D. Yes. Mrs. Jolly, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
I was
You're just remotioning.
I was
Yeah,
Yes. Okay,
A
first,
through D.
second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Secretary, vote on A through D resolution, all board members except Mountainside on policy 8600.
Mrs. Jolly?
Sorry, just on 8600?
No, on
A through D.
A
Oh, A
through
through D.
D.
Through
Okay.
D.
So, on A, I am a no to, 6421 and 8600, both policy and resolution. I am a yes on policy and I'm a yes on policy and regulation for 5116.
What about B, C, and
yep.
D?
Good on B, good on C, and I am, good on D.
Okay, and then you just were a nay on 6421 and 8600, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Policy and regulation.
Mr. Hyman?
I'm a yes, save for the 8600s that I can't vote on. So yes on A through D, less 8600 P and R.
And that, are you going to abstain on those, correct? That's
Is
86.
it technically abstention? I guess technically it's an
Yes.
abstention. So yes,
Mhm.
it's an abstention on 8600.
And you're a yes on the rest?
Yes on the rest, A
Okay.
through D.
Thank you. Mr. Keary?
Yes on policy 5166Y, regulation 5166, no on 6421, no on 8600, policy and regulation. Yes for policy 2270, 3160, 4160. Yes for C, yes for D. Thank you.
So it's the same as Miss Jolly then, correct?
I didn't hear her vote, sorry.
So you just have a nay for 6421 and 8600, policy and regulation. Rest are yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Dr. Forger?
Hello. Okay, so you made it very easy. Will be no on policy 6421, policy 8600, and regulation 8600. And yes to the rest.
Thank you. Mrs. Connor?
No on 6421, no on 8600 policy and regulation, yes to everything else.
Mrs. Penna?
Yes, A through D.
Mrs. Stanley?
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes to all, A through D.
Everything passes except for policy 6421 and 8600, both policy and regulation.
So
Moving-
I'd just like to remind everybody that means that we don't have the hazardous roads added to 8600 policy for September, and that we are going back to the transportation we have currently.
Moving
Point.
ahead to,
Hold on.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what that comment exactly meant, but
It's irrelevant.
it
This
is
is not on the agenda.
irrelevant to this conversation. The transportation team, the district transportation team will need to look at what the routes would look like based on the state mandate. There's nothing more to that conversation as it
That's
relates
not
to
what the
this.
district has
okay,
said.
I'm going to end this conversation now. We have voted. It has been decided. Moving on to administration, Resolution E, approve report of acting superintendent. Resolved that the Berkeley Heights Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the acting superintendent, approve the recommendations for the following cases of harassment, intimidation, and bullying in Berkeley Heights Public Schools. We are pulling out right now 260758 CMS for a vote, yes or no. May I have a motion to go ahead with resolution, resolution E? No? Sorry, go ahead.
We're just doing it for the one, just the one. So we are
Right. Just
voting
the
only
one
on
case.
just the one case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Right. So the motion is, first of all, just on case number 260758 CMS. And then we will have a motion to do the others.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Vote.
Mrs. Khanna,
No.
Mr. Hyman,
I'll abstain.
Ms. Akiri,
No.
Dr. Forger,
No.
Mrs. Jolly,
I abstain.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Mrs. Stanley,
Yes.
and Ms. Bradford.
Yes.
So we have 3 yeses, 3 nos, and 2 abstentions, so it would be 3-3. With that being said, that would be a motion would be a fail on that if you have 2 abstentions, so it fails. Motion fails.
Looking for a motion now for E. It's
Rejected.
rejected. Rejected. Motion now for E, administration resolutions, all board members. E, approve report of acting superintendent. Resolve that the Berkeley Heights Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the acting superintendent, approves the recommendation for the following cases of harassment, intimidation, and bullying in the Berkeley Heights school system. That would be all 4 case numbers there, except for the one that we just voted on. May I have a motion?
You just doing E or you're gonna go E to M?
Just E. May I have a motion for E?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Discussion?
Who was the second? Oh, thank you.
Yes. Vote.
Ms. Penna,
Yes.
Ms. Jolly,
Yes.
Ms. Akiri,
No.
Dr. Forger,
Yes on 260875 MKM. And no on the other ones.
well, I'm sorry, what was that?
Yes on 260875 MKM.
So you have a yes to that one and a no to the rest?
No to the others, yeah.
That was MKM. Yes. Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Ms. Khanna,
Yes.
Ms. Stanley,
Yes.
Ms. Bradford,
Yes.
Motion passes.
Moving on to administration resolutions F through M. We did have a change of wording on H. Okay, and we had that motion approved. So I'm looking for a motion to approve resolutions F through M, all board members. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion. Vote, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Penna,
Yes.
Ms. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Akiri,
Yes.
Dr. Forger,
Yes.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Ms. Jolly,
Yes.
Ms. Stanley,
Yes.
Ms. Bradford.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Going on to education, resolutions A through D, all board members. May I have a motion for resolutions A through D, all board members?
So moved.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
discussion.
I just have a question about this sidebar agreement. Have we ever done this before where they get paid an hourly rate? Or is this the first time?
The sidebar agreement was negotiated with the BHEA.
That's not my question, though. My question was, have we ever done it this way before?
I do not know.
Yes. My understanding is this is the way it's always been done. Actually, the elementary was getting $40 an hour. And then 6 through 12, but speaking to the central office and looking at what has been done previously, it was always an hourly rate.
I am not sure about that. When I was on staff, I believe it was different, but it has been negotiated with the BHEA, and this is what we have in front of us. So a vote on resolutions A through D.
Ms. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Hyman,
I'm a no to B and yes to the others.
Ms. Akiri,
No to B, yes to others.
Dr. Forger,
Yes.
Ms. Jolly,
No to B, yes to the others.
Ms. Penna,
I'm going to abstain on B and yes to the others.
Ms. Stanley,
I'm gonna abstain a B and yes to the others.
Ms. Bradford.
No to B, yes on the others.
Motion passes, B fails on. Motion passes for all except for B.
Would you announce the numbers for B?
You had 1, 2, 3, you had 4 nays and 2 abstentions.
Moving on to personnel, resolutions A through V, all board members. Resolutions W through AE, Berkeley Heights only. May I have a motion for personnel?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Vote.
Mrs. Stanley,
Yes.
Ms. Jolly,
Yes to all.
Ms. Akiri,
Just a second, I'm looking at the revised agenda with my numbers. Yes to all.
Dr. Forger,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes on items A through V, as in Victor.
Ms. Connor,
Yes to all.
Ms. Penna,
Yes to all.
Ms. Bradford.
Yes to all.
Motion passes.
That was personnel. Moving on to business. Resolutions A through F, all board members. Resolution G is Berkeley Heights only. May I have a motion for business resolutions A through F?
A to G.
A to G, sorry.
So moved.
Second,
Who's the first? Nope, I
Vote to
got it.
finish.
Okay.
and second, Mrs. Connor?
Second.
Discussion? Vote. Oh.
I would like to understand a little bit more about item B, appointing the disclosure agent / registered municipal advisor. Can we get a better understanding of what that is?
I guess that's been going on and it has to deal with the bonds that we have for the district. From my understanding, there's paperwork that has to be filed for the financials to ensure that we have our bond rating every year.
The school district bond rating.
That's correct. From my understanding, I went back a few years and that's been going on for every year. Whether it's been making it on the agenda, I don't know. So, but from my understanding was on last year.
Okay, vote.
Why don't we just file it ourselves?
Sorry.
Why don't we file it ourselves?
Yeah, why do they file it or who files it?
It has to be a third-party entity.
Has to be.
From my understanding, yes, from reading the disclosure, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's just like having an auditor. The auditor has to, certify it, certify our financials as a third party. Same thing here.
Any other discussion?
I just wanted to thank the New Jersey Institute of Technology for their donation. I'm very, very excited that we have so many great people looking at our school and helping us build our high school program. I'm really proud. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, vote.
Ms. Jolly,
Yes to all.
Ms. Connor,
Yes to all.
Ms. Akiri,
Yes.
Dr. Forager,
Yes to all.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes on items A through F.
Mrs. Penna,
Yes.
Mrs. Stanley,
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Moving on to finance, resolutions A through D, all board members. May I have a motion for resolutions A through D?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion.
So I just want to say that the bills and everything looked good.
Thank you.
I think we got some clarifications on, I went to do the bills and we had some questions. We did get the clarifications back. I think there was something to do with a refund that I wish I think we were being charged at a higher rate and then we were supposed to get a refund. Can we get a detailed summary of how many hours was refunded from January till April? Because I think the higher rate that was not contractually obligated was being charged for legal services. If you could get a summary.
Okay, thank you. We could look into that.
Thank you.
Roll call vote.
Ms. Penna,
Yes.
Ms. Jolly,
Yes to all except check number 209-839 and 209-968.
209, what was the first one?
The one that's in the agenda, 209-839,
839,
and then 209-968.
968. Ms. Akiri,
S2A, except check number 209-968, 209-959.
209,
59.
and the first one was 209, 968.
Yes.
And yes to the rest?
No, I'm approving B, yes to B, and no to C and D.
Dr. Forager,
No to check 209-968 and yes to everything else.
Mr. Hyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor,
yes to everything except check number 209-968, 209-839.
209, 839, you said? Ms. Stanley,
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes to all.
So we have 209, 968. Did not pass. 209. Let's see here, 209, 968. 209, 959. That's only one. 209, 839. There are only two of those, so that does pass. All right, so 209, 968 is the only check that did not pass. Everything else does pass.
Can
Thank-
I ask a clarifying question? What happens when a bill fails, right? Because it is a bill that the district currently owes. How do we handle that in the business office?
I don't know if this is a recurring one, because I believe 209, 839 was the one from last month. if I'm
Right.
Not mistaken. So that did pass.
Okay.
So now 209, 968 is a new one. So
So we got to try to pass it next month and hope we don't get late fees? Like what's the, for not
I
paying
don't
the
know.
bill?
I'll address that next month. If it's reoccurring, then I
Right.
guess the contractor would come and, I guess, present a lawsuit against us. Sue
Okay.
us for the check.
All right.
Moving on to comments from the.
I just have a clarifying. So a contractor can automatically sue us, or can we sue the contractor for improper billing? Like, on what basis are you saying that the contractor is going to automatically sue us? If we have, see.
I'm
the
not
thing-
saying they would automatically sue us. I'd put it back on. If there are multiple attempts of the board not passing it and not giving me a reason for it, and it's 3, 4, 5, 6 months, then I'm sure that the contractor would come after us and do the necessary reasons to collect it, send it to a collection agency, whatever the case may be.
And if it's professional services, it can go to arbitration to look at what the billing is. Is it funky? Is it duplicate? Is there something wrong? Correct?
Unless somebody provides me with information on what the reason is,
Okay.
I would go back and let the vendor know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to comments from the public on any topic during this portion of the meeting, district residents and staff are invited to address the Board of Education on any item. The board requests that individuals state their name, address, and town of residence or school of attendance for the record. All comments should be directed to the board president, and depending on the nature and complexity of the question, it may or may not be answered during the meeting by the administration. If so, the response would occur after this public portion of the meeting has concluded. Although the board may not respond to all items during the public forum, all public comments will be considered. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility, nor will it be liable for any comments made by the members of the public. Please note that if any member of the public becomes disruptive during the meeting, the board president may terminate the participant's statement. Continued disruptions may result in removal from or adjournment of the meeting. Each speaker's statement will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. Mrs. Pogue.
So I'm not going to disrupt, but I might fall asleep. So hang in there just for my 3 minutes.
Understood.
I'm Susan Pogue. I'm Woodruff School. I'm going to read the letter that I sent to the board during the spring break, and I want to thank Mrs. Bradford and Mrs. Khanna for your acknowledgement and questions about it. In the last 3 years, elementary teachers have had many changes in programs. Since 2021, and this is after COVID and hybrid, we've had to unpack Teachers College for Reading, Big Ideas in Math, TCI for Social Studies, Hegarty for Phonemic Awareness, and 95% for Phonics. Additionally, we learned new digital platforms, iReady and Linkit. It has been a lot of change in a short amount of time. Science will be changing soon after the Open SciEd pilot is completed, as well as the new climate change curriculum. As part of the assessment committee, we are evaluating all the assessments for effectiveness. Based on survey results, teachers agreed too much time was spent on assessment. the committee agreed that linkage should be removed from the assessment schedule. Teachers in the upper elementary use many of the teacher resources in the iReady platform. While I'm not a fan of digital assessments or more computer time for early childhood, I understand it will not be going away. I piloted Star Renaissance with a few of my students as a replacement for iReady. From my observations, watching the students take the assessment and from the feedback they gave me, Star Renaissance is not a better choice than iReady. With the influx of change in upper administration, this may not be the time to make a big decision. I know all the reading specialists also piloted the program, and I really hope the expertise that they bring to the table will be carefully considered before bringing yet another new program to the classroom. I also have a comment. As an educator in this district for 22 years, and with all due respect, I am disgusted, discouraged, and frustrated by the workings of the board as a whole. We have to start the healing process for teachers, students, parents, and the community. It is integral to learn to work together. Our precept this month at MKM and Woodruff, alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much, the words of Helen Keller. If our youngest students can live by these words, our community leaders should be able to as well. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mrs. Pogue. Yes, good evening.
I'm glad I have my eyebrows on because you guys are recording and I was not expecting to get up here and speak at the podium. I usually watch everything.
Hey, we
on
have your
Zoom.
name and.
Aine Farrow.
Thank you.
I live at 258 Diamond Hill Road here in Berkeley Heights. I'm sure as you all can guess, I'm standing up here because of policy 8600, which I just heard get shot down. I do have questions. One of them would be why anyone would feel that or be mistrustful of a police officer's assessment of these roads, yet feel as though they are an expert in their field with EMT. And there's no disrespect with that. Please understand, because I'm a public servant myself. But we must always be careful with the language that we use when you have people in the community that are sitting here listening to all of you. I did see a lot of disrespect, but that's not why I'm standing here. I'm standing here because I'd like to know why policy 8600 couldn't have passed and the modifications be made later. It seems like the decision was made in haste because there may have been a time crunch. Now, from my perspective, sitting back there, if someone sends you an email with the information that you've asked, if they send it the day before, shame on them. If they sent it 2 weeks before and no one bothered to read the email, shame on you. I think that that is something that everybody sitting here needs to look at because it goes back to your communication. Because the policies that you make affect people like me that live on a road where, no, my son cannot go around the corner, walk at least, and play with a friend. I have to get in my car and drive. Now, you can say it's a decision that I made when I bought a house here in Berkeley Heights, but I've been in this town for almost 20 years. And I've seen a lot of things change. And to the point of boards being wasteful with money, because $12,000 is a lot of money. This is not the first time money has been wasted on a consultant group that didn't do their job. But because they didn't do their job, some of us, I feel, are going to suffer because no one has explained how this will be replaced. Busing affects me greatly. My son is at CMS, so the 2.5 miles, we hit that mark from where I sit. But then if you go to Governor Livingston, it shortens greatly. Is there something that you're going to replace this with? Do you have any ideas? Because I haven't heard any come out. I think that these are valid concerns for someone that sits in my position. I'm not asking for you to give a courtesy, so to speak. I don't even mind paying if you give me enough time to work it into my budget. But what I'm asking is, what is your plan? Because I don't think that that's clear for members of the community. So if you're going to shoot something down, have a plan in place, a short-term and a long-term plan that all of the residents can benefit from.
Thank you.
Sorry for going over.
I also have my eyebrows on.
Good evening.
John McWez, 56 Coos Avenue, Berkeley Heights, New Jersey. So I do have a lot of empathy for the folks who are sort of facing a service that's about to be dropped. I don't think it's a black or white issue. I don't think it's my solution or your solution. I think you guys have time to come back to the table. I think what's important is data. So I just want to give you an example, and I'm doing this not to be condescending, but just to kind of maybe illustrate a point as to where I'm coming from. Let's imagine I did an audit, but so this I'm going to talk in my language. I did an audit of your charts, and I threw that audit sheet at you, and it was blank. And I said, your charts are off, and this is what's wrong. Well, could you point out what's wrong? Well, no, it's on there. You could figure out like which items you have to improve on, right? It's a rough proxy. It's not an exact fit, but it's a guessing game. I think there is a way for all of you still to get together to work on this. I really would not want to see families impacted or lose transportation, but I do think whatever agreement is made, what needs to be codified moving forward, not just with courtesy busing, but with everything, is that detail and data matters. And that if the board is going to approve something this important, that it be informed. This is a new board. Disagreements, heated discussions are going to be normal. That's democracy. It's not disgusting. It's good. It's good that you guys are having debates and are passionate about it. That's not a bad thing. Secondly, I'm actually glad you guys, Pam, you might be surprised. I'm glad you guys tabled the discussion on, or what is it? Change that, McPherson or whatever that place was. What was the name of that place? McPherson?
McPherson Jacob.
Yeah, I wasn't thrilled with anybody that was on there, to be honest with you, in terms of the search firms. My feeling is I think you guys should give Mr. Nixon, and I know I have all the rules, give him a year. Let's see how he does. He's been in the district for a while, give him a shot, see how it works. Research is not conclusive that a superintendent makes any real difference in a district at all. And I think there's more harm than good. Well, I mean, look at the data. There isn't a correlation between there's not a way to really track that or measure that. I'm just going to I'll give you the research. Jordan, you always, you usually laugh at my jokes, so I'll give you a pat. Okay. But they could do more harm. I think Mr. Nixon, I'm sorry. Mr. Nixon has good experience in the district. I don't agree. I have not agreed with him on everything, but I know he knows our kids and I know he knows our community. And that to me is a better place to start than Idaho. What was it? Iowa? Was it? Idaho. And then the third thing, well, I don't want a superintendent from Idaho. Give me a second, Pam. I'm sorry. Gail, give me 1 second. Could I have one more?
You can have another minute or two. How about two?
A minute is good.
Okay.
The other piece of it is, and again, although I disagree with you, Ms. Bradford, and I don't necessarily agree with everything that you do in a meeting, I do think you're doing a good job. After that first meeting was very rough, but I think the subsequent meetings, you've been very fair. Not perfect. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I think you've been doing a much better job this time. No, I mean, this year. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Margaret Ellis, 102 Twin Falls Road.
I wasn't going to get up and make a statement, but I am. I'm very disappointed that the transportation policy was voted down. I live on Twin Falls Road. It's off of Diamond Hill. If my children didn't receive busing to school, we would have driven. We would have to drive. We wouldn't have a choice. We can walk to the reservation. I can't walk to school. I can walk to Connell. I can't walk to school. My son walked home from GL once after a football practice. I grounded him for a week because he had to walk down Glenside, that curvy road with no shoulders. That was his best choice. Somebody on social media said that the kids on McMain should walk through the Nokia property. That's perfectly safe for them. That's trespassing. That's private property. That isn't a public road. When you look at that policy, I don't care how we got here. I don't care about the consultant. Water under the bridge. You all hired a consultant. They gave you a report. They came back. They talked about the report. It's done, right? Move on. We need these policies for this board to function, for this school district to function. And it's just really disheartening as a member of the public to sit here and listen to the back and forth and not move forward. So the policy, if you're going to change the policy and charge parents on roads like Twin Falls, in order to get busing to school, there are going to be way more parents that are driving to school because they don't have an alternative. And so you have to deal with the traffic. And we already know that traffic in front of the schools is horrendous. So put those many more parents on the road in front of the schools. I just don't see how that's an advantage. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you to the public for our comments. Moving on to new business. Increased legal spending. Whoever brought that up would like to speak on that.
That was me. And I think now that we have an RFP for attorneys, I would like to understand and maybe put some criteria in there on how we expect responses to these RFPs, and also have an open discussion about what can we reduce in terms of legal spending? Because I believe one of the invoices today that was on the bills list was for 3,700 and odd just for legal review of Oprah requests. If you go back a couple years ago, I don't think we were spending that much on any form of review for Oprah. Mrs. Felizola had a Oprah log, and I think at some point of time for almost 8 months or 9 months, we actually publicly put that on our district website on said, along with the minutes, board agenda on how many Oprah requests were received, when did they receive them, and when were they fulfilled. So we'll have to look at options of opening stuff up. And I know one of our board goals is community engagement and being more open. My only concern is it's April. We've had multiple committee meetings and nobody in the public can go on our district website and can look at committee minutes, meeting minutes. We referred to a lot of meeting minutes in today's discussions. If any of the public wanted to go look at them, they're not on the district website.
Committee minutes are part of our agenda.
Excuse me? They're part of our what agenda?
When we approve the agenda, the committee minutes are attached to the agenda. Is
No,
that correct?
Can public view them? My question is, committee minutes have happened. Are they available on the district website?
This evening, everybody gave their committee reports pretty much from all the meeting minutes. You have a report that you just seen. Everybody gave pretty much mostly the reports this evening, aren't they?
He's saying they're embedded within the full minutes once approved, and that's what he's saying, and posted. Am I correct?
Can I add to what she's saying? I know what you're saying. If you look at the minutes for the 18th March meeting, the finance committee minutes are all hyperlinked into the actual minutes. But some of the other committees are more the conversation that was had at this table. If the point you're making is they all should follow, a similar format, then I think we need to rethink how are we attaching the committee minutes into the minutes of like this meeting.
No.
The 18th March is a good example for you to look at.
But
Thank you,
also-
Mrs. Khanna. That is our next one also, talking about committee minutes.
No,
Do you
let
want to
me-
have something to add to that, Mrs. Zakiri?
if I may, those links that are embedded in that agenda, they don't work. All I'm saying is, in our district's history, we used to, until 2022, before that, I think until 2023, there used to be a specific location on the district website. We basically go and publicly say, we have all these committees, we come here, we give reports, we limit the public to 3-minute conversations, but when we give committee reports, we go over almost 12 minutes. No offense to you, Jordan, it was a long one. And all I'm saying is, when we give these reports verbally, we've spent the time. This is a volunteer role. Nobody's getting paid for this. We've created the committees, we've met, we've done the work.
So we
What
moved
is
on to
stopping?
number 2. Is that correct, Mrs. Zakiri?
So what I'm trying to say is, why can't we just publish them separately on the district website instead of embedding them in meeting minutes?
Thank you. Number 2 is committee meetings. Who brought that up? Mrs. Stanley.
Committee minutes, yes. So I wanted to just talk with the board about procedure for committee minutes. So I chaired last year, I'm chairing this year, and all the boards that I've been on over the 3 years, the committee, right, they work with the chair works with the admins to come up with agendas and then to write the minutes, right? So I usually have the staff writing the minutes because it's coming from the district's point of view to the board. Usually the staff would then share it with the chair or the whole committee. And then we would kind of look at it and make sure that those minutes were accurate, or if there's anything else that we think a board member might have questions on that wasn't included. But this year I'm struggling because I'm on a committee that doesn't work like that. And so I just want to talk with the board to decide how we kind of want to move forward with this and just have a consensus because, right, like, yes, they are our committees, but the committees are really supposed to be getting recommendations from the district that the committee then discusses in detail and then brings to the whole board, right? The full board. And I'm kind of struggling to know, right? Like if we're not going to do that, then we need to make sure that everybody is aware, right? That this is not how we're going to proceed, because that's been the procedure for multiple years that I've been on, is that we work with the staff to bring their recommendations forward after the committee dives into details. So does anybody have anything they want to add on how they think committee minutes should be approached?
So if I may ask, I don't think there is any guidance on how committees have to run or what committees are actually, I think we asked for it previously. There is like a very bare minimum information on what committees are going to do. So basically your statement says that the district recommends what a committee is expected to do. I disagree. I think committees are for the board, created by the board. The board president usually asks for our interest. We convey our interest to be on a particular committee. It's a board committee. I don't understand where is district is recommending an agenda coming from. Yes, on certain boards, on certain committees, like curriculum, there will be a recommendation from the district. But when it comes to athletics, when it comes to negotiations, when it comes to strategy and planning, the committees are for the board, for us to work together to come up. So there is no recommendation from the district. So basically, they are not giving us ideas to work on. We do take their ideas. It's a collaboration with them, but it's our committees.
I I
So-
agree that collaboration is the goal, right? Because, right, like take policy, for instance, right? After the transportation meeting, right, me and Gail are both on the policy committee. We saw that the district really wanted to bring back 8,600. So we worked together to say, yeah, okay, we'll bring it back to the committee. But then we also went to the staff and said, what other policies do we need for this meeting, right? Because that's coming from them, right? So again, it's supposed to be a partnership where I say, hey, I do feel that the policy committee wants to move this forward. Let's bring it to policy committee. And then it should also be them saying, this is what we want to bring to the table, right? So I do feel like that needs to be intertwined, but especially when it comes to the minutes, right? Because the minutes should not be you don't want my opinion on something, right? From minutes, right? You want the district's view of those minutes, right?
I mean, if I could speak, I would just say, I think the two things. One, I don't think it matters who like records the comments per se, as long as all participants get a chance to review, approve, and say, yeah, that is what happened. Did I miss something? You overlooked something, whatever it is. The minutes should be what happened. There should be no opinion. It should just be, this is what happened. And again, that's why I think everyone who attended should say, actually, that's not what happened. Fact, and let's chisel it and get it as close to, but that's, I mean, for technology, sorry it was so long, but we tried to exhaust it by putting all that was covered into it because it was factually what happened.
Yeah. So that way the board gets a clear picture.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
I actually agree with Jordan. It should be an accurate account of what actually partook in the actual meeting. It should be an accurate account. I agree. It shouldn't matter. Should be inaccurate.
Mrs. Sorry.
I think one of our goals was to actually double click on what is the role of a committee, what should be the objective of a committee. Like everybody agrees on what is the goal, who's doing what. I don't think we got around to actually documenting that, but that would be a fair start so that we can be on the same page as to what is the role of a committee. And I will say not all committees are made equal in terms of the content that gets discussed. And some might be a little bit more straightforward than others, right? So just recognizing that.
Yeah,
Mrs. Jolly.
thank you. I'd like to second Jordan's point. The minutes are what was said and just they shouldn't have any bias to them. It's just whoever said anything. But if I look at, what was presented as minutes, or I guess from policy, right? It was all not opinion, but it was one-sided, I should say. It was everything that maybe you had said during the, but nothing.
So my report was actually discussed with Gail to come up with talking points for the policy. So everyone was clear on exactly what the policy was for or against, right? Like what we were voting for or against. So I did have a discussion with the board president on that one. But yes, my minutes though, right? The minutes are very straightforward, right? And I think the problem is that I'm having a committee that doesn't have minutes that are attached, that are exactly what was discussed at the meeting. And I'm really struggling with that because every time I bring it up, right, there's a lot of issues, right? And there's not really a collaboration between them and the district. And I feel like that needs to be worked on.
But the minutes are the minutes, like I'm not
I
sure.
agree. It
yeah.
should be an accurate description of what's
So
happening.
it's not even, right. And I mean, I think it worked, again, maybe that committee is different, but I think it worked well for athletics, right? The minutes were the minutes, and likewise for tech, the minutes were the minutes. It wasn't like verbatim, but it captured the essence of what everybody, had to say. So I'll let me try taking minutes next time in policy.
No, I think
Yeah,
that's right. So I have Mr. Nixon currently doing the minutes for policy because that's right, the district's view. And then I review it to make sure that there was nothing missed, that I thought that the board members would be like, hey, I have a question on this, right? And that way it's really a good view of what actually happened, not my opinion or your opinion, right? And that's where those minutes come in. But that's not what's happening on some of my committees.
Dr. Giordano or Mr. Nixon, do you have an opinion on this
Mrs.
committee
Bradford,
minute?
I just wanted to say something.
Just a minute, please, Mrs. Zakiri.
Yeah, I was raising my hand for
Thank
quite
you.
some time.
Thank
so-
you. I'm going to ask Dr. Giordano and Mr. Nixon if they have an opinion, then we'll go to you.
I hope you realize this is being recorded, right? and we can go to ethics or anybody.
Thank you, Mrs. Zakiri.
Thank you.
I would just say that, I agree. Like, I think in my brief experience, sitting in on a lot of the different committee meetings, accurate meetings help us better understand accurately, help us share the information with the rest of the board, and should be. And I agree. I've seen different meetings, different meeting minutes. Some are more extensive. Some are just more of a brief summary, touching upon the points that were had in discussion there. Perhaps further discussion should occur, maybe at an earlier time when we can, just talk about, maybe set some expectations as what we want to see, how detailed, how not detailed. Mrs. Khan, I agree. Not every discussion is created equal about specific topics. So some meeting minutes may need to be a little bit more lengthy than others to better explain a point. But also keeping in line with the idea that they just should be a factual account of what was discussed.
I agree with what everyone said here. I think more importantly than just the minutes themselves, I think it's important to do what Jordan did. And really, when you come to the board meetings, it doesn't really matter. You want to have accurate minutes, of course, but the details should be out here in front of the whole public when we're explaining those. So everyone gets the gist of what we spoke about, what the next plan is going forward. So Jordan, that is textbook. What you did tonight, in my opinion, is textbook classic reporting out minutes at a board meeting. That's the way it should be. If they're long, they're long. It's okay. Because although the board,
I can make them longer if you want. I mean,
although the board's
the
going to
journalist
share
school
the
if you want it.
minutes with the committee chairs are going to share the minutes with the committee first, and then with the full board. It's more important that the public understands what we're doing in those committees and what's happening in those committees, and the plans and the details that are taking place, more so than you as board members. And then when you're in the public session, you ask questions off those reported out minutes, like, oh, Jordan, I'm glad you brought that up and got really detailed, because I saw in the minutes it was, not as detailed, but I was going to ask you that question to follow up with it, but you already did it for me. I appreciate that. So it really, those minutes should be like a snapshot, a reflection of what happened, a generality, but the details should be absolutely set out here. So just
Mrs.
my thought.
Zakiri.
Thank you. So we've had issues. It's not just committees. I think the entire board has had issues with actual minutes, if we can look at our history. Before we start going ahead and saying what extent do we need, I think it's about time we put in writing what each committee is going to do. And I think according to our school or state ethics, we can't ask the staff, take minutes for us. It's our committees. So we can take turns. There are 3 people in each committee. Actually, I don't see a reason why there can be 4 people in each committee. Finance and facilities has 4 people. So we can have 4 people, we can take turns. And like Jordan did with technology, we can send them out and say, hey, this time I took the minutes. These are my draft version. You have until 24 hours to respond back with your changes. And everybody either agrees. I did go back to Jordan and I said, I think, you missed this. And Jordan pushed back and said, well, I'm just going to put what actually I feel should be put, not a lot of in detail. We don't want 10 pages of minutes, but there has to be, and I was fine with that. So let's agree on what each committee is going to do. What is the goal? How are we going to take agenda items? How are we going to decide on which agenda items we're going to speak, and maybe take turns, because we can't technically ask. So strategic planning. So if Mr. Nixon started taking minutes for every committee, okay, how many committee minutes? Finance and facility meets like maybe twice a month. Maybe during the budget season, they're going to meet 4 times a month. Okay. Mr. Nixon has a day job to do. Mr. Juskovich has a day job to do. So we cannot be demanding and saying, hey, just because you attend to collaborate with us and we like to, throw all these ideas at you, now you're responsible for minutes. No, I don't think that's feasible. That's not how it's done in real world. I'm just giving you example. Even from early on, when I was part of a team, everybody took a stab at minutes, or unless you are like a Fortune 500 company where you have a project manager, an assistant project manager, and somebody like who comes and tags along. Even that person sometimes records the meeting and then transcribes, like there is a transcribing tool. So I don't think it's feasible to ask or come up with a procedure that Mr. Nixon's going to start taking minutes from going forward. I don't
Thank you,
think that's
Mrs.
right.
Curie. Mrs. Penna, sorry, did you have a comment, Mrs. Penna?
No, I was,
Oh, sorry.
well, I think everybody.
And then Dr.
basically spoke about
Giordano?
it. Sorry. I think everybody spoke about it, but I just wanted to say, in terms of procedure, I think it's important that we continue the practice where the minutes are sent to the board so that they are able to look and ask questions prior to the meeting. I think that's something that is important to continue.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah,
Giordano.
one last thing to the board. And again, this is just my opinion. You're the Board of Ed, but also on those minutes or when you report those minutes out, there should be a recommendation from the committee saying, yes, we spoke about this. We spoke about this. The committee is recommending this to be put forward unanimously or 2-to-1 vote for full board consideration, then have that debate out here. It really should be indicative of what the committee spoke about. This is what we talked about. This is what the administration addressed. We're in agreement with the administration. We're putting it forward for full board consideration, or we didn't put it forward for full board consideration. And the board could say, well, a member could say, well, I thought that was a really good idea. Why didn't you do it? It should be indicative of what decisions were made in that committee.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I really quick piggyback on that is just to say that if we're going to spend time talking about the way we approach our minutes but we should we should get it right with how we review minutes, how quickly we come back and just we're not stating the obvious. We're not efficient. We are hugely inefficient. There are boards that are within 3 miles of here, which we all have friends on, that wrap meetings by 10. Why? They trust their committees. They work as committees. So they do the hard work, inclusive of the minutes. People review them. We all ask the questions. The work happens in and around, and you get in a meeting, not that you're trying to prevent information or not have a debate, but you trust your committees. And to your point about trusting those who have advised those committees, again, you can always ask and debate, but there's some consensus. You move toward decisions and you become more efficient. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Number 3, I don't know who brought up annual professional appointments expired in December 2023.
Can I move it in the essence of time? It's 11:40 to the next meeting, please. Madam
Thank you,
President.
Mrs.
Thank you.
Akiri. And motion on the March 18th meeting for those dates. Most of those dates have passed.
Right, that was mine.
yes.
But no, sorry, I was going to say I was crossing them out. But I do think now that we've, selected a CSA search firm, we kind of need to, and as we spoke about this outside after last board meeting, probably meet again to, kind of come up with a game plan of how we're going to interact, so it's not just you. And so how we're going to interact with the search firm, like take care of the logistics. So I think I can cross out these dates and maybe come up with a different time that we can talk about it and agree so that we can have like maybe a set group of us kind of work through the logistics. So you're not the one chasing us and
That sounds like a great idea.
asking us for meeting times.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
think
Okay.
what
A motion to adjourn?
Mrs. Bradford, what is, I wanted to just add on Natasha's is maybe now that we've identified a superintendent search firm, we need to look at adding maybe one additional conference session every month. We have a board meeting. I know everybody's busy. Instead of scrambling or even these 3 people going and checking, hey, are you available? Before we know it, it's going to be the summer. So maybe let's come up with, we're going to add one conference session where the main goal is superintendent search only.
Thank you for the suggestion. Motion to adjourn? The second, ayes? Aye, nays, abstain? Meeting adjourned. 11:44.